Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 108. I don't have a fancy hand gesture for you this week, so you'll just have to take my word that it is 108 this week. I do apologize for being absent last week, given the events in the UK scene, which we will at some point discuss with Gary Yowd's imprisonment. The guest that I had to cancel, unfortunately, and we have not subsequently had time to rearrange. So we are moving on to today's guest, who, I'm very excited to discuss, their 50 years, I think we were talking in the prelude, that they've been in the industry and space. They've seen it all, been a part of it all, so I'm very excited to introduce them. So I'm not going to waffle on too much at the start of this, folks. We'll dive straight into it with today's guest, who is an American cannabis visionary, entrepreneur, author, activist, and cannabis outlaw. I do love people who declare themselves outlaws. They are the founder and CEO of the Emerald Cup, now in its, I believe, 19th year. They are the founder of Area 101 Dispensary and the Emerald Cup Farms. They are Tim Blake. How are you doing, Tim?
Oh, great. Thanks for having me. Honored.
Awesome. Thank you for making the time and sitting down with us. Like I alluded to sort of in the start, you've really been around the scene since, I suppose, well, even some of my parents were in diapers, you know what I mean? So I'm really excited to kind of delve straight into this with you. And I'll start with, I suppose, where we kind of often start with guests and kind of try and go back to the beginning and sort of ask like when and how you first got involved with cannabis.
Well, I was in Catholic school, and in eighth grade, we had one Hispanic gentleman, Tony De La Rosa, that was in my class. And of course, I hung out with him and leave it to him. He would know where the good cannabis was. So I ended up getting high with him in eighth grade, and it changed my life. I was a hyperactive kid, probably would have been put on Ritalin today or something, and it just totally changed my life. I embraced it. We were living in San Jose, which is south of San Francisco in the Bay. And then we moved over to Santa Cruz, near Santa Cruz, right on the ocean, which is a very infamous place in California, below San Francisco. It's always been the second most liberal county in the country. And so we moved on to the beach right in Capitola. And my parents, my dad was a lawyer, but my mom was like an artist type person. And all of a sudden we had this 3-story place 2 blocks off the beach. And all the hippies and all the artists and all the, the stuff in the late 60s and early 70s came right at it. And they started smoking pot with my parents. I lived downstairs in the old bar, which had a keg room, put black lights in there. I had the pool table. I was smoking pot all weekend. And the next thing you know, I'm buying kilos from these young hippies and whatnot in town and selling it at high school every Friday and selling like 34 lids, and to keeping 3 or 4 lids were like 3 fingers, how many fingers they were back in the day. And then I was, keeping 3 or 4, and we'd stay at the pool hall in my place and smoke pot all day with all the teenagers. And it was quite a little fun thing to do back in the early 70s.
Yeah, man.
It was a blast.
So this is something I've been trying to figure out for a while. When I've Googled it, I've got contradictory information. So a lot of my listeners will maybe remember the film Blow with Johnny Depp. That may be sort of the first time that you've been exposed to that vernacular of fingers and lids. Can you explain that in metric or whatever it is that we're using with ounces and grams? What is that in sort of modern parlance?
Well, it wasn't. What you had is you got these kilos that were coming in from Mexico, and they were 2.2. So you'd get about 34 ounces out, 34 ounces. And a lid was technically an ounce. Back then, they also had 1 finger, 2 finger, 3, 4 fingers. It wasn't very technical or metric, but I mean, for your hand, it was like, okay, how big was the bag of weed? But they were basically ounces. And, they went by, 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers, or lids. They called them lids because they were in baggies. I mean, this was before any jars and before anything technical or a lot of scale. I mean, it was very basic. You had only a few scales. I mean, it was just old school back then. So I'd make up all these ounces into lids and stuff, take them to school, sell them, and come back, and we'd party all weekend. And I kind of grew up with all I was in my like 15-year-old range, and all these what called older, cats were all in their early 20s. And those are the ones that basically started developing the huge industry that became all the sticks, the tie sticks and the hash and the Colombian and the Acapulco Gold and all the rest of it out of the rest of the world, bringing into the West Coast. And so I started working for them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So this is in sort of like pre-Sensimilia days. Was it still quite sort of seedy in terms of where it was coming. I know obviously some of the imported stuff, the markets had started to mature a little bit earlier, but sort of in the late 60s, early 70s, what was the sort of play? I mean, a lot of people probably can think of that meme of I think it's 1977 High Times winners. And it's quite scraggly, and it's not really it's not what it looks like sort of today. So I was just sort of wondering what was sort of the comparative like quality? How did it present as sort of cannabis?
It really wasn't that bad. I mean, there really wasn't that many seeds in it. I mean, you see it once in a while, but they knew what they were doing. They were growing females and trying to keep them away from the males. People knew it was up. And the Colombian Red, the Acapulco Gold, the Oaxacan, it was beautiful back then. When it became a big commercial market, I mean, you're talking the late 60s into the early 70s. And it was more of a boutique market with small batches coming in, just like everything else. When all of a sudden it became very large, say from 1976, 77 through the mid 80s, then it became a huge business where you were bringing in millions of pounds of tie. They were bringing in tie sticks, which they were tying up. And then the next thing you know, they realized that it was much better to get stickless without the sticks on them. So they started bringing stickless tie and folding them into these 2-packs with the lightly pressed. And they were beautiful. And so was a lot of the other stuff. But when you got larger commercial loads, it did become a little bit more commercial. But that tie coming out for years was absolutely stunning. And they would bring in 1 million pounds in a boat off the West Coast. They drop 100,000 pounds off Seattle, 100,000 pounds off Portland, 100,000 pounds off, Eureka, and then San Francisco and Santa Cruz, Santa Barbara, LA, and then they'd take off to sea. And then everybody would break those up. Maybe 100,000 pounds would go into 5 people would get 20 to 25,000 pounds, and 4 or 5 people would get 5,000 pounds, and then 5 people would get 1,000 pounds. And I was one of those little people getting 1,000 pounds at a time. And then of course from there it would move back across the country to the East Coast, and we were supplying the whole country with cannabis. And it was amazing. I would get 1,000 pounds at that, like in my late teens and early 20s, and sell it for maybe 13 a pound. I'd make a couple $100,000 back then in the early 80s. Wow. There were no guns. Everything was clean. It was a booming business. I mean, it became so huge that our Department of the Drug Enforcement Agencies of the United States realized what was going on, and they really didn't catch up with it until the early 80s when they made the private prison systems in America, and they also did the minimum mandatory prison sentences. So I had a friend that got busted with 6,000 pounds in like 1985, and he only did 6 months in a local jail. A year later, that was a 10 to 15-year prison sentence in a federal prison. And so, it changed it overnight. I had somebody come to me, and they showed me the finest cannabis I'd ever seen. It was in a jar. It was totally frosted and absolutely stunning. And I'd never seen anything like it. And we had a little bit of outdoor coming in, but it was traditional sun-grown it wasn't perfect. It was a little flawed, and it was beautiful, but it wasn't perfect. This was perfect. He said, this was grown under the lights you see in like a grocery store. And in 2 years, everybody's going to have to go inside because they're going to bust all the outside loads, and they're going to bust all the Thai and the Mexican and the hash loads. And we're going to be forced to grow under lights. And I was like, you're out of your mind. I have 1,000 pounds in my backyard. We're going to grow under lights you see in a store. And I couldn't believe it. Now, I bought all the pot because it was the best I'd ever seen. And it became known with nicknames called the Grease and the Magic and the Chronic. This was in like 1985. 2 years later, I had to go back and beg for that clone because sure enough, they busted every load coming in. They took everything off the streets. They formed a local police department to take out all the Emerald Triangle sun-grown. And then we all went inside and started growing under lights in all these buildings. And that's what I ended up doing.
Wow. So it's interesting. So it kind of starts with Nixon and his declaration of kind of, the drug scourge being public enemy number one. But yeah, as you say, like it took until Reagan for them to really be like, nah, they found a way to, I guess, profiteer from criminalization with the private prison system, as you said, and that really incentivized this uptick of harassment and intervention into our culture. So is it a direct consequence of criminalization that basically created the grow your own scene in Mendo?
Oh yeah. They were. I mean, when all these millions of pounds of Thai and Mexican and hash were coming in, there wasn't that much of a need for that much sun-grown. People were growing it up in the Emerald Triangle, but it wasn't huge amounts. Because, I mean, it was decent amounts. But when they built those private prisons and stuff, they also put a huge task force called CAMP. the California eradication something or other, and marijuana eradication. And then they went after everybody up there. And within about 2 years, if you were growing large scale sun grown outside, you were done. So then everybody had to grow inside of those lights. And people don't realize, but most of the Emerald Triangle bud coming out through the 90s was mostly indoor in those big generator grows. People were growing under lights with big generators. And I tell people, look, it wasn't really just Nixon or it wasn't just Reagan. It was basically, you call it the military industrial complex, the elite, the New World Order, whatever you want to call them. When they started in America in the University of Mississippi studying cannabis in the 50s and 60s, way before Ralph Mechleim from Israel discovered the endocannabinoid system. So we already knew, our government already knew the benefits of cannabis, and they also had moved off all the manufacturing in this country in the early 70s, and they changed our standard from the gold standard to the oil standard. And we had no debt at that time. A man who had a trade job like an electrician or carpenter could have a wife and 2 kids and a home and a vacation home and didn't need a credit card. There was no such thing as a credit card because nobody needed them. Mm-hmm. People don't even realize there was no such thing as a credit card in the 60s and 70s because people didn't need them. But what they did was they decided to take this country and bring it to its knees and do what would have taken a couple hundred years in one generation. And that's what they did. So they stripped the middle class. They moved all the manufacturing offshore. They gutted us, but they didn't count on cannabis. So when they write the history books later on, they're going to realize, oh my gosh, they really didn't realize what a huge industry cannabis would become. And it would basically hold up all the alternative living and the thinking of this country all those years. That's why they hated us so much. That's why they went after us so hard. So it was a product of that. And it was basically, I say the Democrats and the Republicans are all the same to me. All politicians over 50 are crooks at this point, in my almost every one of them, because they're bought off. In this country, you got to have $100 million to run a campaign. Corporations buy you off. By the time you're 50, you're bought and paid for the most part. So they all got together and just said, okay, we're going to keep this out and we're going to keep this down. And they chased us. And when they write those books, they're going to realize that cannabis was really, and the outlaw cannabis people were the ones that saved this country and probably the world, because we didn't go down and we kept an alternative economy going for all those years.
Yeah, well, you're entirely true. It was admitted that in 2008, the only reason the entire world didn't collapse was because of the liquidity in drug markets. And once all those fancy little numbers pissed off the screen, all the fiscal money was in the hands of dealers. Hundreds of billions of pounds of cash was suddenly able to be back into the marketplace. You know, I mean, HSBC got caught out laundering money for the cartels. It's huge money. And it started exactly as you say with this kind of exclusion and protectionist attitude. And now we're slowly, in my estimation and understanding of it, moving into a world where that same cabal of individuals now want to own cannabis. They're bored just coming after us and fucking terrorizing us and locking us in cages. Now they want to make money from us. And we're in this sort of system where I agree entirely. It's left and right is a non-issue anymore. It's all neoliberalistic politics. It's all Reaganomics in America or Thatcherism in the UK. It was started at the same time, this mass deregulation of markets and the giving of public service to private enterprise. And cannabis is one of these wonderful resources that beyond us enjoying it as a drug or a medicine can, you know, change and alter the timber industry. Could now at this point affect it can affect the timber industry. Textiles can now be used like in rebar, so it can affect steel, battery production. Do you know what I mean? As ethanol and biofuels, there's so many other industries that are seeking to try and benefit from cannabis. So we've kind of flipped with it, but the average man is still not free to utilize cannabis. You have to have your license. You have to fall into a certain remit of regulation or restriction by some authority.
Well, yeah, I've been a truth seeker. Now, people used to call that conspiracy seeking, but I don't call it that. I call it a truth seeker since the early 70s. I'm really into extraterrestrials, and so I've been studying with those people. And I'll tell you what, the researchers into ETs have to be good because they have to really hunt for their information. So I've been watching this back then when I started with my Dialogue Conspiracy and Mae Russell. It was about the Kennedy killing and Martin Luther King in this country and how the elite did that and whatnot. And then it turned around. So I've watched the whole thing. They basically could have allowed us to thrive and allowed cannabis to come in all its forms, medicine as recreation, for textiles, like you said. You could have been making all your building materials out of cannabis, all your clothing, and we could have got away from toxic cottons and all the other chemicals we use. They didn't want us to thrive. Foster Gamble's written or did a documentary called Thrive 1 and Thrive 2, and he shows very clearly that they didn't want us to thrive. They suppressed us in every way, shape, or form over the last 60 years. I say it's once really started was when the ET thing came in and Roswell came into this country. But they really have suppressed us and held us back because they didn't want to thrive. They wanted to basically wipe us out. So it's more than them getting bored with cannabis. When they realized we were going to make this legal in this country, they sat back and figured out how they were really going to mess with us. And I tell people they did more in 5 years of legalization in California to destroy all the legacy people's way of life and culture than they did in 50 years hunting us as outlaws. Mm-hmm. In this country, they have a little known tax code they used for the alcohol moonshiners 100 years ago that's called 280E. So they applied it to every cannabis company in this country, which means you cannot deduct anything from your taxes except the cost of goods. And so if you tried to be any other American company, traditional, that tried to exist with only being able to take away your cost of goods, that means you couldn't deduct your labor, your rent, your power, your expenses. And in this country, which is so taxed to begin with, it makes it so that there's not one cannabis company in California or the country, for that matter, that's making any money. Just with that alone, they've made it impossible. Then in this state, California, they taxed and regulated us to death. On top of that, they had $160 a pound tax at one point, just one of their taxes per pound. And so they made it so that nobody could make a buck. And so they've killed off 90% of the market. They've wiped out farmers, manufacturers, retailers, distributors. Everybody's on the ropes. This whole state is going under in cannabis. And it's really an extinction event that we're seeing. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And my hat's off to them. They're brilliant, brilliant people. They're evil, but they're very good at what they do. And they were going to take what they did here, move it around the rest of this country and move it around the rest of the world and put the same taxation and repression onto everybody and then kill us all off and take it over for themselves. So diabolical stuff, but they're good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's terrifying when you put it in such cold terms, but it is so true. And that's the state of play that we live under. And this is what I'm trying to say to my contemporaries in the space in the UK and in Europe is that people are, celebrating what's happening in Switzerland with their trials, with the Netherlands trials and Germany and Czechia and these other places. And the systems that they've sort of been promised, they got elected on one mandate, but whether they will deliver that, it's going to take us a minute to see. But it does seem to be not about empowering the local community, the legacy industry and individuals that, built and protected, as you say, through the darkest days of prohibition, the light of cannabis in that area. It's your Curaleafs, your Tilrays, your fucking Truliefs, all these international companies kind of stepping into different countries and using legal bribery to bullshit their politicians into supporting their global domination. They're in a predatorial race in a fucking ever decreasing pond where the big fish eats the little fish until there's going to be no fish left.
Well, if you look at it, that's pretty much, in this country anyway, the United States, that's pretty much the name of capitalism, what they do. They did that in the technology field. They've done that in the media field until the internet popped up and everybody got to get free from it. And with people like yourself, I mean, it was basically just newspapers and radio and media like Google and Amazon and Apple and the rest of them. They controlled everything. Now, the Department of Defense created the internet system in this country. And the military did that so they could spy on us, but it got turned against them because then it freed people like you up and everybody else to have podcasts and influential sites. And so it's really it's an overall package of how they really suppressed us to hold us down and really feed us bad food, give us bad medicine, stress us to death, make us have to work so hard we can barely keep up, terrorize us, divide us all and turn us against each other so we don't go after them. And then basically try to finish us off so they could just rid the planet of most of us and just take over. And it's a brilliant, brilliant plan that they put together. And it almost worked, but now it's failing very quickly on them.
Yeah, I think that have just spent the grand there to the audience, this cabal of individuals, which is just the natural occurrence when you allow homogeny and power to go unchecked. It gets ever smaller as they, like I said, devour each other, as they merge and acquire and all of the other bullshit to become ever more omnipresent and powerful. And yeah, that is the nature of capitalism. And it's interesting that cannabis, as one of my mates often says, it's a capitalist resource with a socialist agenda. So the capitalists are bringing it out, they're now wanting to make all this money on it, hedge their bets, try and control the market. But in doing it, people are consuming cannabis and they are, being introspective. They are having these kind of metacognitive moments where they're sat thinking about themselves and who they are and who they want to be and what position they hold in life. And I think that is terrifying to them, because all of a sudden, if not to use the parlance of, I guess, woke, which has become a controversial term, but say awakened to the bullshit of their lives, to be deprogrammed from the shit that they're fed and every day from the systems around them. And I think, that is what they didn't account for. And the same is true with psychedelic compounds. And I think this is why now we're seeing this push by pharmaceutical companies to go, okay, psilocybin mushrooms are useful. So what we're going to do is patent a novel compound of psilocin, and you're allowed that if you pay us $6,000 a go. But you're not allowed to go outside and pick mushrooms in the field. That's dangerous. Don't ever do that. But come to us if you want mushrooms. And they're just creating that system of exploitation where they're taking the best aspects and then they're saying, all right, come have ketamine with us for $6,000 at a pop of an infusion, and then we'll guide you through that experience. We won't allow you to discover God in your own terms, in your own words, in your own world. We're going to guide you through that experience to make sure you don't have too mystical of a journey, or what we would call psychosis. When if you look at anyone that's at a high dose of a psychedelic, you could argue that's a form of psychosis, because then not them, but that's the point of it. Is to separate yourself from yourself, to fractionate your consciousness, to be able to observe it. And that is the terrifying thing. So as long as they can make it cost prohibitive, and they can have people like Will Smith going, I had ayahuasca and it changed my life, but then we're not allowed to fucking interact with DMT containing plants. It's that hypocrisy. It's that multi-leveled classism. I think more and more people are recognizing that than ever before, that there is this group of vested, interested, nepotistic individuals that are seeking to dominate the world, whether you want to call it a conspiracy or a new world order. It is actively happening. Look at Davos. Look at, if you want to get a bit more controversial, Bohemian Grove and groups like that. You know what I mean?
Well, it's again, they're masterful at it. Right behind cannabis in this country became psychedelics, and they were always there, but then they just popped up. I mean, when they get the repressive sentences here 40 years ago for the cannabis people, they made psychedelics even worse. If you got caught with a couple bottles of acid, you did 20 years or 30 years. A lot of people did 25 years. They really suppressed the psychedelics. But right behind the freeing of cannabis came psychedelics. And it used to be that you'd find one ayahuasca ceremony in a city maybe every month. Now there's 100 ayahuasca ceremonies going in California every week. I mean, it's just popping up all over. They can't put their hands on it, but they're trying to keep it down through just what you said very eloquently, making it so that they control it, they patent it, it's integration. I go on all the sites and say, look, that's great for people. Some people need to sit down with the therapist and do the integration, but we've been out there in the fields doing dance parties and doing psychedelics outside for the last 40 years at Burning Man and everywhere else, and we're just fine. Just stay out of our way and we'll take care of ourselves and we'll do it. When they formed the private prison systems, and my friend brought me that indoor bud that was super, he told me something else. He said that cocaine is $100 a gram right now. And he said, you're going to watch it. It was an elite drug. He said, you're going to watch it become $10 a gram within 2 years. And within 2 years, they'd switched it up. And a person in the inner city couldn't get any cheap cannabis, but they could get $10 grams of crack. And they just destroyed the inner cities. Now what they're doing in this country is they're running fentanyl in, and they're just having people die left and right because they're just flooding the streets with fentanyl. It was cocaine, then it was speed or crank, then it was fentanyl, and they're very good at just flooding the streets with cheap chemical drugs that just screw people up. So they get us from all sides. So they're trying to prohibit the psychedelics, but and at the same time, they're trying to funnel all the fentanyl in there. And it's really a sick thing, what they've done. It's a crime against humanity, and they're going to pay. It's all going to come out. It's coming out now, and it's all falling apart on them. So they did a good job, but their time's up. People are waking up one by one.
Yeah, and because they don't have the passion, the commitment, the lived and living experience in this community, they don't give a fuck. They've made their buck. If it collapses now, well, screw that. I've still got my 2 holiday homes and my, what do you guys call it, 401k in America? They've got their set, they're sorted. So they're not going to stick around to fight for it. But it's the people that actually give a fuck that really invested and put their lives into this, believing that they could change and mold that system from inside, that are going to be left holding the bag. And it's terrible the way that they've co-opted and stolen like our language, our culture, you know, our icons, our music. They've taken certain aspects to normalize cannabis, but as long as it only promotes this legal cabal, this capitalist multinational model, not this homegrown culture of you grow your own, you sit together with your mates and you smoke it. It's all glorification of dispensaries and spending money and whatever else. But the thing that got us all here of just getting together with your mates, that drive to just connect with other people, connect with the plant and share that social space, that is still that driving force behind us. And they can keep dangling all these fancy carrots in front of us. But as you said, as you're saying, like a lot of the businesses are just not, they're not getting where they're getting because we're looking at it and going, that isn't what we wanted. So we're not going to support it.
Well, yeah, we're going to rebel back. But I mean, out here in this country, they've taken you go to a local farmer's market and get a tomato or a vegetable and you can taste the energy and it's just incredibly powerful. And same with cannabis, when people locally grow it and it's put love into it and it's organic and people have good cultivars. When you get these giant crops, these monocrops that are done with chemicals and they're all done with factory machinery, it's the same with food. It just waters it down. The cannabinoid profile isn't the same. It doesn't get you the same high. And they just make it so that people aren't really getting high as they should. So that's what they do on the one side. But, you know, I love to see where we're at because they lost with cannabis. They're losing with psychedelics. They're losing the control over these countries left and right. People are waking up and rioting everywhere. And no matter what they do, they're falling apart and you can see it. And so they're getting desperate. And the next 9 months are going to be very exciting to see because I think you're going to see the peaceful revolution really come to the forefront across this country and across the rest of the world.
I really hope so. I mean, we're sat in quite dark days here in the UK. For all the vast majority of the populace now want to get rid of our Conservative Party, our version of the Republicans, I suppose, to take a right and left wing kind of binary political stance. But our left wing have moved very centre into right in a lot of policies that have alienated the classic left. So people are going to vote Labour, which is our Democrats, to get rid of our Conservatives, which is our Republicans. But in the midst of this, like our financial crisis, it's the deepest it's ever fucking been. Inflation has spiked like nothing we've ever seen before. We're one of the most expensive energy consumers in Europe, if not even the world at this point, because of how screwed we are. We've deregulated everything that used to be nationalized and used to be under the control of the system. And yet there is still no real groundswell or movement against this because of what they've done in policing. So they're putting into law a ban against our protests. So we can't get together. They're trying to pass a law that says that if we are thinking about protesting, they can come and kidnap us from our houses if we've attended a protest previously in 2 years or are known to a protest or activist group. So they're really trying to, I think in the UK, get ahead of that wave because you've got some really smart economists, really smart, national planners that are talking about this and going, no, something's going to happen. There has to be a correction in the financial market. And when it does, many governments ain't going to last. So there is that moment where I think we're going to have almost like that French yellow jackets movement. You remember when they were on the streets every week, constantly that sustained sort of protest and really brought France to heel. I don't think the UK's got that. But America, you guys have fucking got it. You're a young country and you guys really believe in the First Amendment and everything else, that you actually have a constitution. Brits don't. We have a monarchy that dictates whatever the fuck we're allowed to do. And subsequently, complaining is not one of them. So I hope that wave rises and that it floods onto these shores, because even now with trying to arrange a protest for Gary, who's just been recently arrested in the UK, we're quite apprehensive of not knowing what the law is and what's going to happen if we try and organise to stand against them. You know, are they going to hit us harder? Are they going to try and lock us up alongside of him? And it's yeah, it's a terrible position to be in. I mean, the UK we are as corrupt as California, I would say, in terms of its the influence of multinational conglomerates and of international investment vessels and organizations like BlackRock and Vanguard that, own large parts of our infrastructure. So I agree. I do hope there is this kind of revolutionary spark, because this isn't the world that most of us fought for. This isn't the thing that I've been sat here for nearly 10 years trying to push in this country. And that's for reform of cannabis. And it isn't to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. It isn't to leave my friends in cages while some of my friends get to become millionaires. You know what I mean? It's this hypocrisy that's within that system it's so hard to digest and to sit with when so many of my contemporaries are, like I said, are just calling for legalization. And they go, we want Cali weed here. And I'm like, do you even know what you're saying? What you're implying, what system you're inflicting upon the rest of the populace,
Well, that's well said. You obviously have done your research and homework. And, if anybody was awake back when Nazi Germany was around, they would look at what's happening in England and say, this is like what the Nazis did. You can't talk, you can't voice your concern, you can't protest. That's not a democracy. I know you're a monarchy, but I mean, there's democratic societies. They're doing that in Canada. They're doing that in this United States. All of a sudden, they're censoring people. They're holding it all back. They're trying to keep people from talking about things. And it's incredible. I went to a UFO conference 6 years ago. I thought I knew a lot about ETs. And I got schooled by the best people in the world. And they explained to me, which I really realized quickly. We grew up with Bush and Kissinger and all the Republicans being the evil people, because it was, that was the tradition back then in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And then they realized there was going to be a large aging population of baby boomers who were very liberal. And they weren't going to be able to sell them Henry Kissinger or Nixon or Reagan. And so they had to create Obama and the Clintons and that whole thing, because that's what they needed to sell us. Now, I voted for Obama. I voted for Clinton. I swallowed that bait. But they're the same people. There's no difference between them and the Republicans. And they just come in. If you look at their actions, our President Obama started more wars. He basically wiped out the Middle East. We're talking about him. He got a Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize. He wiped out the whole Middle East and killed more people than anybody. And it's like, why do they get away with this stuff in the name of, like, we're liberal people. We smoke pot. We play saxophones. And it's like they put us to sleep because they own all the media and they control everything. And they basically really woke me up to how my liberalism and what I was seeing was really been snookered. And so I really had to come across and wake up to that and realize that it's all the same thing. There's very few people that are pure. At this point, I would say that almost in this country, the Republicans are probably more on it than the Democrats, even because they see this. The Democrats are fighting to take away our guns and our free speech and all the liberal things that we should want. And the Republicans are fighting for it. And all the liberal people are going, yeah, take our guns away, take our free speech away. Like, look at Elon Musk. They're attacking the shit out of him for taking Twitter and opening it to free speech. And yet, wait a minute, this was a guy that everybody thought was a heroic guy for making electric cars and being liberal and being a great guy. But as soon as he bought Twitter and wanted to open up free speech, he became like this terrible, evil guy by most of the liberals. I look at my liberal friends and go, you know what's happened to you? Do you guys know how asleep you are, where you're at? Because they don't understand. They're clueless, most of them. Mm. They're waking up, though. Bill Maher, if you watch Bill Maher, one of our famous comedians, every week now you watch Bill Maher, and he's waking up every week and going, how did this happen? What's going on here? And so it's all coming out very quick in this country, very, very quickly. And in Europe, it'll follow, too. Once this country falls and opens up, then the Britons won't be able to hold it up either. England will go too. Because you guys are very repressed. You and Canada are two of the most repressed countries in the world right now.
And it's interesting. Canada and the UK, they basically have a proto version of our laws, obviously, because of former Commonwealth links and part of the, what the hell do you call it, empire. Such a weird word, but yeah, the British Empire, and so it's the money that was raised out of that, ironically, for hundreds of years on being global drug dealers, since the two opium wars, in China, and disrupting that entire region, and utilizing drugs as slush funds for like I said, for hundreds of years. This then created these supranational corporations and dynasties and families that weren't nationalistically ascribed. So they were able to take their wealth and move it across borders, hide it with taxation, put things through shell companies and all the rest of it. We've seen this in the Paradise and Panama Papers with the trillions of assets that are just not counted on books because they're in these other they're part of these other resources. And that's now surpassed nationalism. That's now surpassed national government. So you see what you're saying is like, yeah, it's that group of people go, we're going to play red team today. Red team, yay. Oh, I'm bored of this now. We fucked it over. Let's go pretend to be blue team and get them on out. And it's just this, it's as Bill Hicks points out, and he's saying it's the same left and right wing. It's the same bird. And that's what people, I think, are waking up to this idea, is they're all in support of an international corporate technocracy, a kind of authoritarianism that isn't, that manifests nationally, but is international. So they control dissent in all spaces at all times. I think one of the reasons they went after Elon so hard, after celebrating him for so long with the technologies and the potential sort of things that he was involved in with the Boring Company and the tunnels and all the rest of it, is exactly that. He sought to expose, especially through the Twitter files, which I suppose in some circles is still quite controversial, the influence that was coming from vested interests, that was coming from government, that was coming from intelligence agencies, that was coming from private corporations that wanted to massage certain narratives, that wanted to coerce and control the narrative that was out there. I mean, there's a wonderful film, I think it's from 1976, called Network. And it's where the sort of the speech, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore," comes from. And that's a wonderful sort of expression of showing what happens with the conglomeratization of media. And then all of a sudden you can't criticize, say, this company, because we also want an airline. So we're not going to run a story about that airline being bad. Our investors are invested in this region, so we're not going to talk about that region. And it just limits that narrative and what is acceptable to be spoken of in that kind of the Overton window of political acceptability. And they've just been playing ping pong back and forth, and it worked well with Clinton. As you say, he came on with his saxophone, and I'm not going to try my Clinton impression. It's been a long time since I've done it. And really sweet talk to the public, and everyone kind of went, "Oh, he can't be that bad." And he had his sex scandal, and all the geezers were like, "Well, yeah, he's one of the lads." And we kind of lessened it. And then, Obama came in with that wave, and as you say, the juxtaposition of him being given a Nobel Peace Prize and residing over, I don't know if I can check the figures on that, more deaths than Bush, the previous president. But in terms of the uptake of the drone programs, increasing surveillance, what he did in terms of what he was signing versus what he stood at the pulpit and said was worlds apart. And it's still taking people now over a decade after that to kind of go, there's something not right there, and they still don't want to itch it, because we're in this binary world where if you criticize your team, you're automatically in the other team, and it's like you have to have a team, because otherwise you're not playing the game. And it's like, that's it, I don't want to play the game. I want to step out of it, look at it, observe it, and try and get as many of you out of it, so we can go look at the absurdity. Look at this little imagined game that they've had us in, this pageantry that we've been playing for decades, trapped in this illusion, hypnotized to it.
You know what? In 1947, we had the Roswell UFO crash in this country, in New Mexico. And they already knew about ETs because the Germans were working with ETs. You can go back to the whole story about the Germans. And they moved to Antarctica. But basically, at that time, we formed MJ-12 to research the whole project. And within 2 years, our president, Dwight Eisenhower, wasn't allowed into Area 101, the top secret base in Nevada. And he realized that he'd been cut out by the military-industrial complex. And he wrote a famous speech before he retired and said, "Beware of the military-industrial complex." He warned everybody. He told John F. Kennedy, our next president. Kennedy tried to stop it. They killed Kennedy, and that was their last of the freely elected presidents in this country. And that's when they basically took over the world. And they were like, we're not sharing the ET thing with them at all. And so that's really the overall 30,000 foot level is the ET thing. They basically realized they could get into space. They worked with the Nazis that were doing spacecraft. Boeing, Douglas, all the military jumped in with them, and they basically launched spacecraft in the 1960s. William Tompkins was the head of our spy program in World War II for the United States. He was one of the people that created NASA and was leading people in the Navy think tanks. And he wrote a book with Michael Salla 6 years ago saying that the Nazi military industrial complex launched ETs in the ships in the 1960s and went out into space and have been dealing with 700 ET races and trade through the next 30 years. The good side of the military launched in 1986 8-mile-and-a-half long spacecraft, and that they've been playing Star Wars in space ever since then. And he wrote that with Michael Salla in 2016, and this was a guy that knows more than anybody. And so basically there has been a war in space with the elite controlling this down here that whole time. And that's what it really was. They'd gone into space. They were going to make this a park. They found that one asteroid that they said they could get enough minerals off in the next 100 years and not even mine anything on this Earth. They've already just found one. We could have already been doing that, turned this world into a park. Everybody could have just worked a few hours a day to contribute to society like they do on other ET planets. We could have all followed our arts and passions and had a thriving place. And instead, through, like I said, food, medicine, everything they did to us, they were going to basically repress us, kill us all off with the vaccine and whatnot, and then take this over for themselves. And that really came close to happening, but it didn't. What you're seeing now is the turning of the tide. They're getting Biden. They're going after Trudeau. They already ran Merkel out. They ran the person out of Italy. New Zealand, that lady's gone. They're going after the people in Brazil. The whole world has basically had it. And we're waking up very quickly, and we're going to see the peaceful revolution come in. I deal with the leading ET people now. What they've said in the last 6 years has all come true. And they're saying that we're going to see worldwide military tribunals within the next year for all of this, because we can't even trust all judicial systems or our governments anymore. And then we're going to be given free energy. We're going to be given med beds that heal all, like you see in Star Wars and Star Trek. Everybody's going to have free energy. We're going to be completely healthy. They're going to repair the oceans. They're going to take 900 trillion from the elite, put it into repairing the oceans and the land masses, organic food for everybody, the biggest jobs program in the history. And then our ET friends are going to land within 1 year to 18 months, and they're going to be here introducing themselves to us. And we're going to be welcomed into the intergalactic circle. So this is the end of the free will experiment that's happened since we were created by the Anunnaki 12,800 years ago. And it's gone on for all that time. All the intergalactic ETs have watched this and given us our free will. And now it's time for that to come in. And the meek are going to inherit the earth. And it'll all happen within the next 18 months. It's all coming down right now.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. I guess I'm not as avid as a believer as yourself, but it's interesting because I see more and more this convergence of a narrative around, because again, it kind of makes sense to some degree. I'm just going to kind of pick this apart, not to pick you apart or the argument, but just kind of discuss it out. Sure. If we look at the technological evolution of this, if we look at, say, things like Operation Paperclip, which many of the nearly 1,500 Nazi scientists were rescued and rescued from the docks at Nuremberg, and weren't put on trial. And NASA was built with this technology, with was Von Braun and the V2 rockets and all of that sort of thing. And then obviously the various other governments pulled it apart. And then when you look at the evolution of even just in your life, I mean, it must be mental in your lifetime, going from your classic cassette player, all the way through your MP, so literally a couple of grainy bits of tape, physical technology that you can understand and go, this is on this tape. I press play, the tape goes through this reads this and makes the sound. Now, most technology thought about in abstract is basically fucking magic in an evolutionary point of view, because humanity, we just pissed around with sticks and stones of fire for a millennia or whatever in the, let's call it the traditional worldview. And then we've kind of evolved into this position of saying we have all this evidence of previous incarnations of modern Homo sapien. But yeah, we are this blip where there is just this explosion of technology. And this is, I guess, where I entertain, I guess, as a way of describing it, the conceptual idea that technology could have come from somewhere else, because it doesn't spark me as like, how long between Newton and the theory of gravity before kind of the mechanistic machines that arose out of that? Things are supposed to take time. Yeah, as you said, we have this ever-growing smart surveillance network of systems around us. How powerful the technology is, how incredible the amount of data that we're storing. Again, to think of like the images of the rocket that took us to the moon in 67 or 69, whatever it was, or allegedly, I suppose we've got to say these days, because who the fuck knows. That was rooms to just get megabytes, kilobytes. Now you can hold terabytes in your hand. Do you know what I mean? That evolution of technology is almost suspect, I guess. But we must just take it for granted. And it's interesting. I'm an ardent watcher and avid fan of the X-Files. I've actually got a I Want to Believe UFO poster above my desk right now, in homage to kind of Agent Mulder's desk in the basement in the FBI building in Quantico. So yeah, it's. I guess I want to believe in a sense, but it's not. I can't. It fitted into my worldview and it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? So I entertain it and I like to explore it. I have a friend of mine who is going to love this fucking episode because he is well into this, and literally he keeps an eye on like solar activity and various other things, and he's going, oh, this is this and this is this, and yeah, I appreciate sort of the worldview, and actually I'd be quite optimistic and hopeful. I would very much like that as a world event to occur if we could actually just go, all right, here's the promise that we were told we were going to get through automation and innovation was not joblessness and the crash of the economy, but going, yeah, you can go back to hunter-gathering, a few hours a week, you potter on, but everything you need is mechanically engineered, is automated, is delivered, is done behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, very quickly, it was very clear in Nazi Germany that they had William Tompkins, this man who ran the spy program for the United States, came back and said they were dealing with dark ETs that were evil ETs, and the Nazis were given technology to build spacecraft because they joined in with them. And they didn't really lose World War II. They moved to Antarctica. You hear all the stories about all the Nazis down in South America and whatnot. They moved to Antarctica where there were bases. And they moved down there, and Admiral Byrd, our admiral, one of the leaders in the military, went down there with the largest naval expedition in history, bigger than anything in World War II. And he got his ass kicked by those Nazi ships. And he came back and there's newspaper stories about him in Chile and stuff saying that he fought spacecraft that could go pole to pole within minutes. And they whitewashed the whole thing. And then there's a famous picture of UFOs over the White House that they whitewashed off all the Google too. You can find that if you look around. And that wasn't ETs. Those were Nazi spacecraft. They're the ones that checkmated Dwight. They said, you have the technology. We have the technology, but you have the production power. So he made a deal with them. MJ-12 went against Dwight. That's when the whole thing went down with the military industrial complex and the Nazis. That's where they came about. And they went into space and we came in. But if you back up a little bit, one thing that happened, the ET people talked about Elon Musk and how he was taken off planet to Jupiter to a giant ET ship and sat down before the Intergalactic Council and told he wasn't really a good boy, but he could change his life. And he came back, and this was a year ago, and they tracked him over the last year. And if you do it, this is a fact. He sold all 4 of his $20 million homes, and he bought a tiny house, $40,000, and he's living that on his launch site in Brownsville, Texas. And he said, you know what? I'm going to be traveling the stars in 2 years. And he changed his life. They told him to buy Twitter and bring free speech back. And he did that also. So they've tracked all this and shown that. I'll show you a picture of the ship through the James Webb telescope that we launched that shows the ship exactly. It's twice as big as the moon Europa. But when you go back in history really quickly, the Anunnaki, who Zachariah Sitchin wrote about, the book called The 12th Planet, and the Nibiru people, the Anunnaki, it was in Sumerian text. He was the Jewish scholar in the 70s who started deciphering Sumerian text and said all this stuff. Well, now there's about 25 scholars that have deciphered Sumerian text, and they all say the same thing. There was a race of Anunnaki that lived here for 250,000 years, and this was their planet. And all the civilizations along the shores were where they were at. We're finding those. There's now proven a thing that's called the Younger Hydrus impact. And it was a giant comet that hit here 12,800 years ago, and it hit Michigan and northern Canada, and it hit Greenland. And they're showing that that's what happened, was that there was the Clovis people in North America, pre-Native American. They can't find any skeletons. Well, the reason why is because a 500,000 foot tidal wave washed over North America. So what happens is the Anunnaki got up in their ships and avoided a lot of that, but they were damaged majorly. And their leader agreed for them to be able to create us from the hominids that were on this planet. So just like we had the technology jump from all the ET stuff in the 50s and 60s, we also have this jump where people can't figure out where we went from being primitive people to all of a sudden creating things like, go back like Tempe and all these sites that are just incredible. So what happens is Enlil and Enki, who you see in the Bible and Sumerian text, Enki basically created us, took a rib, like they say in the Bible, and created us. And his brother Enlil was the military commander. Enki realized how special we were and wanted to free us. Enlil wanted to just keep us as a slave race. So they kicked Enki off the planet. Enlil moved on. And everything you see in the Bible, in the Old Testament, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth and all that crap, that's all the Anunnaki, Enlil, and all those guys. All the stuff you see, that's not God. God would never tell anybody to have an eye for an eye or hurt anybody. That was all Anunnaki. So basically, the Anunnaki created us. And then you look at all the fairy tale myths of the half man, half beast, and all this crap. But what happened was, for 1,300 years, when they were creating us and working with us, they made all kinds of experimental beings. And that's why those were not myths, they were true. Well, the leader, Anu, came back and went, what have you guys done? This is going against the prime directive. We weren't even supposed to do this in the first place. So we got to get rid of this. So they basically either created or allowed another comet to come in 11,500 years ago, which they're now proving. And that was Noah's flood. That was the great Noah's Ark flood. And Enki, who loved us, told Noah about this because he was half Anunnaki, was his son, and told him about it. And that's why Noah survived. And that's why you had all the indigenous people survive. And that's when you look at history, that's when the Anunnaki embedded themselves into all these tribes, which became the Incans and the Mayans, the Peruvians, the Mexicans, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, all over the world. And the islanders, and they all became embedded with the Anunnaki. Okay, and that's what basically has happened. That's how we evolved, and that's what's been going on. And the proof of all this is coming out very quickly through. There's a Druid archaeologist named Elena Danaan in Ireland, who's one of the leading people in the world talking about this. Michael Salla has written 6 books. He's a PhD. Michael Salla is a PhD. He's written 6 books on this. He's got the best book series in the world if you want to learn. He has a book on the Chinese aspect of ETs, on every bit of it. And they say, if you can go on YouTube and see all their stuff, they have some far out stuff like I'm talking about. But just recently, John Peterson, who runs the Arlington think tank for the Navy, and Greg Bratton, who has 500,000 followers and is an environmental scientist and one of the leading researchers in the world, just came out last week and said everything that Alana and Michael is saying is true. And these are the insider military people. And what they're saying is what I've been saying for 2 years is Enki and the Anunnaki ruled this for 250,000 years, and their kings, they had 12 kings and queens, and they all ruled for between 20 and 30,000 years. These beings lived for a long time. So it serves to think that 12,000 years ago, Enki and Enlil are still alive. And so they're now saying that Enki is alive. He's in that ship they took Elon Musk to, and he's going to land, and the Anunnaki that created us from their DNA and the hominoids is going to land here and welcome us. And we're going to have the most tremendous re-education of humanity in the next year once they get control of this, because we're all going to have to realize what really happened. So that's how we made the big jump in terms of being real humans, because they can't figure out that happened. And you're actually right. When the ETs got crashed here and we got all their ships and stuff, the technology jumped. And what William Tompkins said was, we're probably 30 years behind what they really have. They're already it's just like Star Trek. They're already basically making food out of machines. They're moving people across distances and stuff. The stuff they can do is unbelievable. So we're going to have the most incredible ride of our lives. We're going to have the greatest moment in history since we were created over the next 2 years. And that's why I'm very excited.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's interesting because obviously there's to I guess remain for entertainment's sake as well as anything else. a bit skeptical. It's interesting that the work of Graham Hancock and his series on Netflix and the backlash that got, to me, was, I couldn't quite understand it. I couldn't quite figure out what the hell people were on about and having a go. And it's interesting that, his work on the idea of, I've got several of his books up there, of the species with amnesia. To then the theory that you're proposing or speaking of here is that we don't have amnesia. It's the species that was prior to that wasn't what we are now, which I think is quite interesting to sort of to think about. The same is true of sort of White House disclosures and things like that that have come out recently about military saying they've recorded interactions with what do they call them? Not UFOs anymore, unidentified aerial phenomenon or whatever it is. And so, it's interesting. It is very...
Well, Graham Hancock's a very key person in this. If you go back and look, Graham Hancock just wrote a book last year called America Before, and he's the one that basically has brought all this to the forefront, that this comet hit called the Younger Hadron's Impact Theory. And basically, he talks about that and what happened. And basically, it all makes sense when you look at it now. They said that science is going to prove religion. It is proving religion very quickly. It's just not going to be the religion that most people thought. That's really what it was. So basically what happened was you had everybody thinking that we had this evil God that was, vengeful, and you had to be careful or he'd come down on you and do all this stuff. Well, the Intergalactic Council basically got together and sent down holy beings such as Christ and Buddha and Muhammad and all these beings in a very close proximity of time, maybe 500 to 1,000 years, to teach us basically about the one God, about you can find God within yourself, about you don't need a church or this or that. You can basically find spirituality in your own enlightenment without that. And they came down to bring that and foster that message. And that's basically was all put together. We've been followed and nurtured by our ET friends and benefactors for all these thousands of years. And they've been watching this. I was going to show it to you, but I just missed it. I'm going to show it to you right now. So I've got this. So what I use, you have to balance science with fact and whatnot. So what happens is that our friends that were researching found this picture from NASA through the James Webb Telescope. And it basically shows the Anunnaki, the ship that they're in. I'll get it to you right now. And so what they did was they sent back pictures of the James Webb Telescope, and anybody's familiar with that, it's 10 times stronger than the Hubble. And they're looking into space, and they're already finding universes outside this universe. They're already finding electromagnetic signals on exoplanets. They're finding all the stuff that they knew they would. They knew they were going to find this, so they got 24 theologians working full time on how to introduce us to these facts, because it's going to come in no matter what. This picture, I don't know if you can see it, came back from a NASA James Webb telescope. And if you look at that, you're going to see Europa, the moon, next to Jupiter. And then you're going to see this unnatural object in between. And if you blow that up, it's twice as big as the moon Europa. And it basically can hold millions of ETs. And that right there is the ship that they took Musk to, and that's where Enke is. And that's where the Intergalactic Council, they have 4 of those ships. They hold about 3 or 4 million people. And so there's about 15 million people orbiting that planet in conjunction with each other, waiting for all this to come down. It's all being planned.
Wow.
I study quite a bit. I mean, I study probably 3 or 4 hours a day and follow the leading researchers in the world. So I pretty much have a good idea what's going on.
An amazing sort of field of research. Didn't they announce the James Webb Telescope was damaged or something recently, and said that they were not going to be able to release more pictures from it recently? It's another one of those kind of narratives that doesn't really make sense, of them saying, oh, well, it was for the arms race that we went up into space and landed on the moon, and it'll cost X amount more. And it's like, well, if we have this more technology, why haven't we been back? That's one of the things that I'm quite, curious about, regardless of any of the other sort of subject matter we've discussed, is that the narratives that are presented to us don't necessarily make sense. And then I'm a strong believer in kind of like the Akashic records, as the Buddhists and Jainists described it, that all knowledge, past and present, is kind of in an ether, and we kind of tap into it like a TV and an antenna and a signal being directed to it. And I think from that, we are kind of sharing and tapping into this kind of awareness, as we spoke of before. And I don't know if it is in a sense connected to sort of what you're saying, but I do enjoy postulating and thinking of sort of the concept of it. You know what I mean?
Well, you got both. You got the Akashic records. You've got a whole billions of ETs, not ETs, but spirit guides and angels running around in the fourth and fifth dimension, working with us as individuals. So you have this giant fourth and fifth dimensional network of creative beings helping us individually. Then you've got these ETs that are very ancient, and they also are basically third and fourth dimensional. They can go in and out too. That's why they can go through walls, and they can actually interact with our spirit guides. And so there's a magnificent thing going on that's it's really beyond anybody what they could imagine. I'm looking for this other picture. They sent back a picture from the James Webb, and it's on YouTube, and they talk about finding a spacecraft that's 1,000 miles long. That they found. They've already scientifically.
I think I remember seeing that in the mainstream press, and it being people debating of what sort of the structure of it is and what it could be. And again, there is this mass increase even in the mainstream legacy press of these conversations being had, and I think it was Terence McKenna spoke of this idea of kind of softening a culture ahead of time. The powers that be will ink it out. They will install little bits into your life so that over time, in the same way the frogs in the water, that if you heat it up slowly, they won't notice. Whereas if you make these jarring changes, they will. And I think we're kind of being, set to understand it. Again, even in our media, there has been an explosion in TVs and films that are sci-fi based, that are exploring other sort of concepts, obviously starting with Star Trek back in the 60s and all the iterations it's had. And yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. They knew well that these telescopes were going to find all the life on the planets. They knew this was all going to come in. They knew that all of us were going to find out what was up. They were really out of time. And they knew that they had to control us, wipe us out. That's what COVID was about. They basically put it in this country. They were, in fact, around the world, they're trying to create digital currency. So they're going to take us off a cash system, move us to a digital currency system. It'd be like China, where you get a credit score. They could turn you off at any minute if you weren't a good boy or girl. Forget just going out and protesting. They just turn your money off. They were going to basically repress us, bring us in, wipe us out, get rid of the people they didn't like, and then turn the rest into a slave race. And they basically came very close to doing that, but they were stopped at the last minute. And it's really a remarkable thing. And we're going to see all this come out. And we're basically, what the ET people will say is that we're up in space. It's all been cleaned up now, and we're in a mop-up job down here. They don't have connections to all the ET energy and power and stuff anymore. So the elite of the world are really on their own. And it's going to be really phenomenal as we come out with all this. And so that's what's really coming in. I have a major call. I'm sorry, I was late to our meeting. I missed that. I need a secretary, much better. And so I've got to go in just a couple of minutes. I would love to get back on or continue this if I could, but I can't find that one. I'll have to send it to you. But it's a major piece. I follow the James Webb because that's scientific stuff they're sending out. And these are all on YouTube. I like to send them to people because it shows that they found this craft that is an unnatural object, and it's 1,000 miles long and it's moving. Okay, so sure, they can try to say whatever they want. It's a spacecraft, and everybody knows it. Just like that picture I showed you is an unnatural object. It's twice the size of the moon Europa. Okay, What is that? It's man-made. Call it what you want, but it's very, very exciting. We're going to see that. It's people like you getting this information out, and all of us that are really going to be the ones that look back on as the heroes, because I know you don't make any money. I mean, I assume you don't, and most people don't, but you make very little money off doing this. It's a passion project. We're doing it for the good of the planet and trying to heal people. And cannabis is one piece. You peel the onion back, and psychedelics are part of it. Cleaning up our food systems, making people aware of what they did to the vaccines, how they're repressing us with all the laws, how they're trying to basically enslave us, all the way up to just cracking that egg and opening it up
so that we can take ourselves back and basically get that free energy in these med beds and our introduction to our ET friends. And we're going to be traveling the stars in 2 years. I guarantee you. Elon Musk knows it, and so do I.
That's
what's going to be happening.
That's some good hope and optimism. I'd like to think the same. Thank you for coming back and taking the extra time with us. Really appreciate it, Tim. Yeah, really fascinating conversation there. I think what I'd like to do for the next part is, well, it's like I said, I don't want to, disrespect you by saying, oh, I believe you entirely, but at the same time, I don't want to disrespect by saying I don't believe you. It's a fascinating subject and topic, and really the kind of shit I do enjoy conversing on. So yeah, I do appreciate it. But yeah, I just want to get to some.
It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. Yeah. So yeah, let's move back to the cannabis thing. Let's jump into that. We just kind of went off on that tangent, but okay.
Hey, that's my audience are used to me going on some hella tangents on this podcast, so they'll be quite used to it. And I imagine you'll have gained quite a few followers there from my audience that are, again, I don't want to say that way inclined, but are of similar belief and sort of worldview as yourself. So yeah, glad we can connect those dots. I suppose we spoke of how you got involved in the scene, the early days. And I suppose one of the things that I wanted to sort of really discuss is, I'm trying to look for the sheriff's name, and I don't know if I wrote it. Tom Alderman.
Tom Alderman.
And
sure.
Sort of what you did sort of with him, and how, from a cursory glance, I've been so snowed under with work with trying to organize things for Gary at the minute. But from the cursory glance that I took, it looks like you worked together and really created kind of a system that was massively reciprocal. I saw the claim that was made by yourself that you effectively funded them in the second year after you kind of established this model. Could you tell us about that?
Well, we started the Emerald Cup a few years earlier, and Pebbles Trippett came to me. She's kind of the matriarch of our tribe, and she's a very major activist in this state. She got arrested just to earn the right for people to transport cannabis. It's called the Trippett Standard in California. And she said, you know what? There's more cannabis people than there aren't in Mendocino County. Why don't we control who gets elected for sheriff? And so we decided to have these sheriff debates at Area 101. And we said, look, if you guys aren't going to come up, we're going to choose who we're going to pick for sheriff. And they realized that. And so we had 4 sheriff candidates come up to my place, Area 101. And it went so well that we did a runoff. We had about 500 people watching this thing, talking with cannabis people about how they were going to interact with us and how they were going to deal with us fairly. And so we had a runoff, and we got Tom Alderman elected. The district attorney loved it so much that they had a runoff, and we had 2 there. So in the course of 6 months, we had 4 major gatherings between law enforcement, sheriffs, and district attorneys with our community. We got the sheriff Tom Alderman elected, and he was sheriff for 13 years. Right after that, we created a program called the 9.31 program, which was the first program in the country before any state went legal, where you could grow up to 99 plants legally with the permit from the sheriff's department. Now, like I said, everybody was growing under the shade and the trees, hiding from the cops at that time. And the sun-grown bud wasn't very good. That's why most people preferred indoor. They were like, oh, sun-grown's not very good because it was in the shade. It was hiding out and it wasn't getting much sun. Now you could grow in full sun and get huge plants, 99 of them with the sheriff's permit, by paying about $7,000 and these fees. So the second year, we had almost 100 people in the program, and we gave $700,000 to the sheriff's department, and they were going to have to lay off a bunch of sheriffs. And we actually saved all those layoffs and helped the sheriffs actually keep their department together that second year. Trouble with it is, the feds saw this, and they came in and busted the lead guy in the program. I was number 2. And they said if we gave out one more permit in the county, they would arrest the sheriff, the board of supervisors, the district attorney, and everybody. And that's when they got to see just who the feds were. Tom Alderman did a press conference where he said, I'm giving you intel on these cartel grows in the woods, they're using chemicals, and they're all drug lords. And you're coming and busting my legal people that are providing money for the sheriff's department. Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, and if you do one more of those, we'll arrest you too, Tom. And he was like, wow, now I see who you guys are. Mm-hmm. So it was a really, really major point. And so we had to go hide. And then right after that, Colorado and Washington went legal. And then right behind it, California came back. So very interesting historical turn of events.
So Tell us then about the founding the Emerald Cup. Obviously, I believe it's 19th year you're going into this year, or was that last year? It's 19th year.
Yeah. Well, I was growing that indoor from the 90s into the early 2000s, and then I had a couple close calls, and I realized I was going to have to shut that down. And I own this property right on the highway, 150-acre campground called Area 101, and you drive by it, and there's a life-size, full-size billboard with a UFO hand-painted landing in the forest, and you see a marble Christ and a 1,500-pound Ganesh statue, and all the buildings are murals and a 6,000-pound Buddha. And so they got a couple of stages. So it's a very alternative event center that we do a lot of trance parties, electronic parties, and a lot of things there. Well, I had some friends come to me and said, you know what, we're talking about it. And I brought it up that it'd be nice to have a celebration of the fall harvest. Like you see, we have county fairs in every one of our counties in this country. And at the end of the year in the fall, they do these celebrations of the fall harvest, and everybody brings their vegetables and their produce and the animals and all the stuff there. And they have contests, and it's a celebration of the fall harvest. And so I was like, why can't we do one of those for cannabis? High Time wasn't there. Nobody was doing anything in the country at the time. They were like, you're out of your mind. People go to jail for 15 years still for this. And we said, well, we're just going to do it. Now, we disguised it as a birthday party for two of my friends. We didn't put any posters out. It was way underground. Most people thought we'd get busted. People showed up in mass, and we got away with it. Nobody even knew. It was a very small party, a couple dozen entries, about 300 people, and we pulled it off. So the next year, we put a little poster out that we put on the backwoods, billboards and whatnot, not anything in public. And it became big. It went from a couple hundred people to like 1,000 people overnight. We had an all-night party, all the psychedelic party from midnight on. If you stayed up all night, you got a survivor's breakfast. You got a free breakfast. It became known as survivor's breakfast from there on. We had all kinds of people come in for that, and it really kind of took off from there on. It was really amazing to see the evolution from there on.
That's lush. I love that. Yeah, that's cool. So that'll have been when was the first one? 2000 and
First one was 2004. We came out with that second one in 2005. We did our first. We couldn't do a hash contest because you go to prison for 10 or 15 years for that too, and you couldn't sell seeds because over 1,000 seeds was a 15-year prison sentence. That was part of that minimum mandatory stuff. So they really held the genetics down, and they kept all the concentrates down because people were really afraid. Well, that second year, some of my friends were in the corner doing something that looked kind of shady to me. They looked up at me. I didn't know what they were doing. I walked over there and looked in there, and they were pulling on kind of an illegal hash contest in the middle of our illegal flower contest. And I couldn't say anything. I let them get away with it, even though it was a lot of risk. And so that was technically our first hash contest. But we started out with just one flower contest, personal use, no vendors. It was just a party. And then a friend of mine, Ringo Lawrence, showed up. He's a famous guy up here, passed away, God bless him. He brought all the CBD strains in, and he was selling seeds kind of under the table. And my partner MC came and threw him out and said, you can't sell seeds. We can go to jail for 15 years. And he left, and he was all butthurt. And then I found out who it was, and I got together with him and apologized later on. And the next year we let Ringo slip in and do that too. So we slowly brought the seeds in and the CBD, and one contest after another. And that was 2004. The election for Tom Allman was 2006. So 3 years later, I did the elections with Tom Allman. And that's when the Emerald Cup started really getting bigger and bigger.
Wow. So the situation that you developed with Tom and that model, that was based on Prop, which one came first? 64?
Well, no, that was 64 didn't come until 10 years later.
Sorry, 215.
215. There was a decrim law in California through 215, but that didn't set up really for sales. It made that you could move stuff through medicine, but it wasn't outright sales. So we were still working within that model. And it was interesting. You could have a dispensary in California and sell cannabis, but you couldn't legally grow it and sell it. So it was kind of like, where was all this stuff coming from? Well, it was coming from the indoors and the hills and everywhere else. So we just went to Tom and said, let's cut the crap. Give us a permit. We'll pay for it. We'll grow full sun. We'll sell it to the dispensaries, and we'll evangelize for sun grown rightfully. And he was like, great. What he did right then, I can't thank Tom Allman enough. He basically was the first political person in this country, a sheriff no less, that said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to just put my ass on the line, and I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. And the whole county went behind it, and we did it. And it was an amazing process.
Wow. Yeah, it's fascinating. We're seeing these kind of spaces operate now in around the world that are emulating that kind of model, and what you did there of the community working with police to circumnavigate politicians, because
Yeah.
it's too slow. The systems are too corrupt. They're too interested in making their money from it. We've seen that by the iterations of various legalization systems and legislation that we've seen implemented around the world, that it's always about them getting paid first. Our access and our freedom is secondary, if at all considered. And yeah, how has it changed then? Well, in Mendo in California in general, since sort of transitioning from 215 onto Prop 64. Because from the people that I've spoken to that helped build it, the people that were a victim to it, and even some of the people that temporarily benefited from it, all say it was a pretty shitty transition.
Our governor Newsom in California came up to the Emerald Triangle and got together with all the elders like myself. And Prop 64, which was our initiative to legalize in California, spelled out very clearly that you could not have more than 1 acre for 5 years being grown in the state on a property. Because if you did, you were going to kill off all the small farmers who couldn't grow that much. So everybody had to grow 1 acre or less. And it was all agreed upon to protect small farmers for 5 years so that they'd have a chance to get their businesses in order, to get their farms in order, or to segue out or do whatever. 2 months into 64, Gavin Newsom, and he was a Democrat, went against that policy with Steve DeAngelo and a bunch of people, and he opened up large-scale farming. And immediately, flat land and the farmland down in Salinas went from 20,000 an acre to 80,000, and Mendocino property started collapsing. And it took a few years for it to build a head of steam for all those big farms to get going. It really was started off with 5, 10-acre farms. Now you've got 100-acre farms down in Santa Barbara and in the coastlines and in the San Joaquin Valley. You got one farm growing as much as all of Mendocino. So the prices have collapsed. Those farms didn't have to, the big farms that were traditional didn't have to do anything to prepare to grow cannabis. Every farmer in the triangle had basically built their houses illegal. They didn't have their roads illegal. Their septics weren't legal. They had to go back and work with the building departments and say, okay, you've got to get all this stuff legal now. And you got to work with the Fish and Game and make all your water systems legal. And you got to work with the labor boards. And you got to do all this stuff to get up to speed. So it took years for all these farmers to get all their buildings to code and all their water and their roads and everything. In the meantime, all these big farms down south just fired up. And the next thing you know, several years later, all of a sudden you're watching pounds go from 1,200 to 800 to 400. And, it costs $4.50 for a small farmer to grow a pound, and they're selling it for 400. So they're losing $50 a pound.
And that's before the tax as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Do the math. It's impossible. They're not even taking any money. Most of them were just hanging on. And over the last couple of years, you've lost probably 75% of them have gone bankrupt. There's a road called Spy Rock behind me, which is in Mendocino County, and it's the most infamous outlaw road in Mendocino. It goes up about 10 miles and back. There's about 250 farms back there. It was the heart when they brought the military into Mendocino. They landed at the Spy Rock School. There's only 25 farms being lived on back there now. The other 200 plus farms have gone bankrupt, and they're not even living there. They can't afford to live out there because there's no way to pay their way of life. Without cannabis, how do they live out there in the middle of nowhere? So you've seen an extinction event in the Emerald Triangle and around the state of these farms being deserted. And the crazy thing is, where did all these outlaws put their money over 10 or 20 years? They couldn't, when they made their money, they couldn't put it into the banks. They couldn't put it into, real legal things. So they put it in their ranches. So they had all these beautiful ranches that were worth like $1 million or $1.5 million. And now they're only worth $500,000 because nobody wants them. So their life savings are all gone too.
Yeah, it's the sort of concept that I try and highlight here in the UK and Europe of cultural erasure, of a co-option of our way of life, that they will speak our language, they will, use our slang, they will even try and dress like us, act like us, but they are trying to use this as another tool. It's another cosh to beat us out of our way of life to coerce that conformity, as you say, to go, if you want to participate, we need to know everything about you. You have to file these forms. You have to be, surveilled. You have to have these people come and check your farms and check the work of people that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, providing far superior products than that which is commercially available via these, as you say, monocropped farms. And I often speak of this concept of love, and it in a quite abstract pseudoscientific sense, that the best weed I've ever smoked from around the world, wherever I've been, is the small grow by the guy that loves it, or the woman that loves it, the person that loves it, that tends to it, that cares for it, that puts that into it. And we can't quantify that in science yet. We can't understand what it is, but there is something to it that is lacking soul, spirit, substance. You can taste this mass manufactured, whether it's coming from the criminal marketplace or from the pharmaceutical conglomerates, or these big LLCs that we're seeing pop up in various regions, that there's something extra missing to it, that we ourselves, we cultivate our own plants, we trade amongst ourselves, and as you say, we create that lifestyle, that community, and that can't be sold to us, that can't be prescribed to us, that can't be given to us. That's something that we developed in opposition to their tyranny, to their fucking acts of terror, frankly, against us as a population. So it's very disturbing to me that Cali as a concept is held up around the world as this is the model, and they're still romanticizing this older model that yourself and others helped set up, with Dennis Perrin and that managing to actually gain the kind of ground that was gained in '96 for the law change and the MMJ cards and all the rest of it. That legacy is being shat on because it's being erased. We promised these freedoms to be able to live our lives our way, and all they've done is find a way to coerce us into conforming to exactly what they want in order to continue doing what we were doing illegally anyway.
They're, like I said, they're so masterful at what they do. For the cannabis people up here, they made a law that if you had a cannabis farm, you couldn't have a weapon to defend yourself. Now, people are living up here where I do in the middle of the mountains. There's bears and mountain lions and, pigs and stuff. You have to have weapons just to keep yourselves and your kids and families protected from the animals alone. But then you got robbers coming in. And now if you have a gun, you're going to jail for 5 years on a legal cannabis grow. So you can have a legal cannabis grow, but you can't protect yourself from robbers or from animals. And it's like, what kind of shit is that? Now you see in this country, we had the Second Amendment, we had the freedom of speech, we also had the freedom to have weapons. And now they're trying to take that away. They're making you register these weapons so then they can get your ID in your house and everything else. And then they come over and do searches at your houses anytime they want. And it's just like what they're doing in England, where they're taking it. So we're losing our ability to have our freedom of speech, the right to not trespass us, the right to illegal searches, every bit of it. But they really went after the cannabis people, and they got them from all sides. And they have just, I did a podcast with Farmer Tom yesterday, and the depression amongst everybody, because everybody's just watching their way of life going, what do? You've been a cannabis farmer for 20 or 30 years. What do you do now? You've been on this ranch in the middle of the Emerald Triangle for 3 decades. Now you haven't got a job. Your land's not worth anything. Where do you move? What do you do? I mean, it's really the suicides and the depression and the divorce and the abuse and what they've done to it, the PTSD, what they have done to the Emerald Triangle of farmers around this state is so sadistic and evil. They're going to really pay some karma, when they have to face their maker and deal with this stuff because of what they've done to all these people, And so I've taken some heat because I evangelized for Prop 64, the legalization, but I did because they promised no farming larger than an acre for 5 years, but they also set it up so that mainstream people could embrace cannabis and people wouldn't go to prison for long-term prison sentences. And that stopped. People aren't going to prison for long-term prison sentences, and mainstream people across the state and the country are embracing cannabis. So on that note, we did what we needed to do, but we just took about 250,000 farmers and families that built this industry for the last 40 years, and we destroyed them. We destroyed their families and their lives.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that's exactly what sort of trying to articulate to my audience to understand, sort of when we come to fight for what we want to fight for, to understand what has happened in other regions and understand the implications of wanting certain models. It's interesting, as you were speaking there, it reminded me of something I read in The Guardian yesterday, which is a link I'll share in the bio below. A ban on, I hate how even The Guardian uses the word marijuana. Ban on marijuana users owning guns is unconstitutional. An Oklahoma judge has ruled that a federal law prohibiting people who use cannabis from owning firearms is unconstitutional. So there is movement in some regions to challenge these things, because again, it's the more normal, as you say, that cannabis becomes and the more normalized, the more people go, well, yeah, why can't they do that? Well, I now smoke cannabis. What do you mean I can't do that? People are starting to question those systems. And again, America's lucky in the sense that you guys have citizen initiative ballots. You guys can get together and go, oh, we don't agree with this shit, and you can actively engage in that system. We as Brits, we really don't. We have had no active democracy in this country for the entirety of my lifetime. I don't know that there ever really has been, to be honest with you. Under a monarchy, how can there be? So I do hope to see, you know, movements in the states as we are, and in some of them, to kind of walk back the more restrictive elements of these legislation, and to again try to go back to listen to the legacy individuals, the people that built this. I don't want to see another fucking CEO from a multinational conglomerate speak of legacy and speak of honoring, you know, the people that came before them, because their entire industry is built on the bones of the people that, I'm not going to say they murdered, but in this analogy they did. You know what I mean? They're stood on the graves of the people that have been destroyed by their actions, and for them to be now in places like, I don't know if we've seen in Oregon, a proposed legislation to make it 10 years minimum for 99 plus plants.
Yeah. You know what? It's crazy. But when you look at it, the thing with the initiative process is, in California, like Prop 64, you get, because I was part of the founding of that, you start off with a really good initiative, but then you realize that to make it pass, it's a fact that you need $35 million in campaign funds to be able to convince people to join it and do it, because the other side is going to tell people that they're going to lose their lives, and you're going to have cannabis crazy people all over you're going to smell it all over your yards and all this stuff. So you got to get $35 million, and you got to get the sign off from everybody. So then you start having to compromise. And so then you compromise with all these different people and groups, and you take one part of the initiative out and you get rid of this part of it. And so in California, the initiative came where every city and county could make their own rules. So some counties are dry counties and some counties aren't. We had 10,000 dispensaries, cannabis stores at one point. Now there's 1,000 because all these different counties and cities banned it. And so, and some counties and cities let all the illegal dispensaries run right over all the legal ones and destroy them that way. So you kind of look at it and you go, wow, the thing with legalization and with initiative is you've got to make sure you have enough power so you don't have to compromise with all that. And the thing you said about Oklahoma is really good, because people where you're at probably don't realize Oklahoma is a little state in the middle of the country with a couple million people, very conservative, Republican, you'd consider it rednecky kind of a state, right? But they turned around and legalized cannabis, and they didn't put all the taxes and regulations and all the crap we did in California. They said $2,500 and you can have a permit to grow, and you can grow whatever you want. And all of a sudden, everybody from California and all over the country ran there. And in 3 years, they were growing so much pot in Oklahoma. You hear about Oklahoma pot all over the country. And it was cheap and easy. People had no problem starting up. They didn't have anybody coming after them. They didn't have to go through all this track and trace and regulations and stuff. And they could sell it legally, and they could also sell it under the table, black market style. So they wiped out all the traditional black markets, and they also took it legally. And all of a sudden, Oklahoma, that little redneck state, blew away the big, giant California liberal state. And it's amazing when you think of California being the 6th largest economy in the world, this wonderful presentation of liberalism at its best. And what have we done? We've done worse to the cannabis people ever. We've done worse to the inner cities and the poor people. We've taxed ourselves more than any state in the world. We have more homeless problems than anybody. We've taken away all the rights to guns and laws and everything else. COVID was heavier here than anywhere. And it's really, we turned into the most liberal, but in our own way, conservative, repressive state in the country. Mm-hmm. California did.
Yeah, it's amazing to look at that, and again, it's further evidence towards this how ridiculous and absurd this left-right divide is. That it's not about the classic archetype ideas that were ascribed to liberalism, to libertarianism, to capitalism, etc., to these conceptual ideas that most of us operate in. They're so corrupted by money and by this nepotistic connectivity of corrupt cronies that they own and operate everything. And as you said, it's capitalist capitalizing. You know what I mean? It's how that system operates, and I'm trying to create groundswell in the UK and trying to understand how we can truly have a grassroots movement, because we're not facing one enemy on one front anymore. We're facing an enemy in prohibitionists and the classic kind of, skunk psychosis, cannabis makes you crazy, it's addictive and will destroy your lives kind of arguments that are being presented by our, mostly boomer generation media people and politicians and think tank individuals. And yeah, we have to get this kind of push that if we can get the plant decriminalized for the people, it almost doesn't matter what the legal system looks like. Do you know what I mean? Then there isn't the incentive that everyone needs or can create a legal profit or whatever else. If everyone can become sort of self-sufficient in the first instance, anything that flourishes after that is not for necessity. Do you know what I mean? Whereas there are a lot of people that I know in the UK that grow and survive off growing. As you said, they live that almost Mendocino life. They are off grid, so they don't claim benefit or anything like that. They're not attached to the system. They live sort of within it, as in they pay their bills and everything else, and they're otherwise law-abiding citizens. But they operate within that sort of cannabis space. And I fear for them if, and as far as the Tories are concerned, legalization does come to the UK, and it is this kind of Canada plus California on meth. And it is just this insane system of taxation, regulation, cronyism, nepotism, and nobody from the legacy industry gets into that space.
I agree with you completely. I've got some friends into the decrim movement for psychedelics, and I've told them they want to know whether to go decrim or go full legalization. And I said, don't go legalization until you can control the narrative, until there's enough people that are not going to allow it to be done that way. Because if you go that way, you're going to lose total control, like Canada and the US has, or California has. We'd have been better off just staying as decrimmed, because we could have sold through the dispensaries and sold through the medical side and had a lot more rights and never had them come after us like they did. So for us, I would look back and say that would have been better off going decrim. Although, again, people stopped going to prison for long-term jail sentences, and we were able to really open up the whole country. So in the greater picture, it was the best thing that could be done. But you got to be very, very careful with it, because it's something else. You look at our country with Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, lots of good liberal people that are now becoming Republicans, because they're watching what's going on and they're like, wow, the Democrats and the liberals are worse than the Republicans. They're more repressive than the Republicans, and it's crazy to see that it's turned upside down. It's like the whole world is turned upside down. And, there's a lot of things with conservatives that I don't agree with. But overall, I look at a lot of the things of like freedom of speech, the right to carry weapons, the right to use cannabis in any form you want to. The Republicans want to pass a cannabis federal legalization with less taxes than the Democrats. The Democrats want to tax the crap out of us. And it's like, look, you're already taxing the crap out of us. You can't take anymore. There's nothing more to take. You can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. And so it's really it's a fascinating thing to see politics and the way it's gone, especially with cannabis. But there's nothing that's going to stop it. Psychedelics are going to come right behind it. And we're going to be fine over the next 5 years, because just like I said, the whole package is collapsing right now. And we're going to take back our world. And once they do this and they get rid of the Federal Reserves and they get rid of the central banks and they get rid of these repressive laws and police forces, we're going to be able to do pretty much what we want. I mean, it's going to be more like a libertarian environment, where as long as you're not hurting anybody else, you can do whatever you want. As long as it's not impacting other people and you're not doing anything to hurt anybody else and it's all fair, then people can agree upon it. Because for the most part, what is cannabis, unless you're growing pot next to your neighbors and the smell and the smoke is going in there and bothering people, it's like, why should anybody be able to say what people do, whether it's psychedelics or cannabis, And if you want to have weapons, you should. They've proven that the more people that have weapons, the less violence there is. I mean, when you go into somebody's house and you know that they've got weapons in there, you're a lot less likely to go into that house than if you know they don't have weapons. So it's like criminals have weapons. So you know what? Good people should have weapons too. And I'm not a big gun person, but I'm just saying that it should be the right for everybody to have that.
We're in an interesting situation. Years ago, I may have disagreed with you on it, but now I look at the militarized police force around me. I walk through train stations where police officers are carrying fully automatic weapons. I see them driving around in unmarked cars, 4 and 5 of them armed with fucking multiple guns. They are actively shooting and killing unarmed people in this country, and we don't have a Second Amendment. We have no right to bear arms. We have no right to defend ourselves. And yeah, we're in an interesting situation where the individual has never been more attacked, and the previous program of left-right binary. So situation happens, it's ran through filter left, filter right, pushed into the people. We're nice and divided, bickering amongst ourselves. The guys at the top that sit and dine in the same dining rooms, that are all part of the same clubs, went to the same schools, intermarry, and all the fucking rest of it. And then dictating and controlling. And that has got so I don't know what the word I'm looking for, it's a mathematical term, but basically it's intercepting and closing at such a rate now that it has to devour itself, as you say, whether it be through this multi-planetary intervention or it be through just a general collapse of neoliberalistic capitalism, because the model has become so cannibalistic that they're devouring themselves to be trying to get to the first trillionaire without realizing that if we start having trillionaires, that means we have hundreds of thousands of people, not millions, because it's a finite system. You can't create that liquidity for people to have food and access to everything else. And this is why I believe that cannabis is that ultimate resource. You know, it's one plant, you clone it, you could have 1 million plants. Do you know what I mean? It's a self-replicating resource that can feed us, that can house us, that can clothe us, that can heal us, that can give us that liquidity financially to participate in these systems around us. You know, there's not all the things that we can develop and grow ourselves and be our own little islands. We have to have this kind of social interactions. And if we're then forced to use cash, cannabis is an incredible way for us to generate that amongst ourselves. Because, like I said, a lot of the industries that now exist because they were able to capitalize on the criminalization of the marijuana with a H tax act in the 30s in America. And all of a sudden, all of these industries that were traditionally part of cannabis or were in different ways were then all utilized by people like fucking the Rockefellers and that, to push oil and petroleum byproducts into medicine, into fuels, into textiles, into various other sort of products. Yeah, while cannabis was then demonized, and they've come full circle and gone, oh my God, we've poisoned the world and nearly killed everybody, and that's now killing our people. And they're going, let's heal them with psychedelics and cannabis, but let's put a price limit on it. So none of those poor people, I don't want poor people, homeless people, suddenly having revelatory experiences and deciding to fight for their rights. You know what I mean? I want my kid to microdose LSD to be more productive in Silicon Valley so we can make more microchips for the war machine. That's the good citizen idea that's presented to us versus this dirty, self-sufficient hippie. And when actually you look at the planetary impact, when you look at the lifestyle, the quality of that lifestyle, that dirty hippie is a lot more happy and a lot more well-adjusted than that guy running through the mill of that system that is just there to be a cog to perpetuate, as you said, the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, any of these multinational industries that have become basically ran by 4 or 5 groups. You know, they are these cabals that dictate everything that occurs within their sphere of influence.
Yeah, well, you know, we didn't have to cut all the trees down in this country. We didn't have to destroy all of our topsoil. We didn't have to use cotton, which is a heavy pesticide-needing substance where hemp doesn't need anything. They did that. I mean, everybody goes back in history. I mean, hemp has been used throughout every society for clothing, for sales, for every part of their cultures. And we basically took that off the table and went to petrochemicals and to cotton, and used the petrochemicals to kill everything so cotton could grow, which destroyed the soil. It was really just a sick, selfish thing to do, which we didn't have to do. And it's all collapsing right now. We'll go back to all that hemp. We'll go back. We need the hemp manufacturing plants, what they're going to start building in this country right now. We need to basically get those plants together so we can start developing all these rare products. They're even making planes out of hemp now. I mean, they're going to show that we didn't need any of this stuff. And hemp is like, it remediates the soil, cleans it up. It needs very little nutrients to grow really well. I mean, it's just an amazing product in itself. So it's coming out now. They kept it from us as long as they could. Their time's up. The global elite that you're talking about, they started to control the world in the 30s through the Great Depression, taking over the monetary systems and creating the central banks. But then with the ET thing, they stepped it up into a whole other level and really changed the whole number from there on. And they really did a number on us. But cannabis, I keep saying it, it's the one thing they couldn't get control of. It's the one thing that they didn't suppress, and they tried, and it just basically popped out all over the place. And now you're seeing it come back with psychedelics, and they hate it, but they can't stop it. And so it's done. You know, they were going to put that digital dollar in place, and like, you don't have any weapons in Europe. You're right. You guys are already wrapped up because you have no weapons. In our Constitution, our founding fathers said, look, there's going to come along a time when we're going to need these weapons because we're going to have repressive governments we have to rebel against again, just like we just did right now with the English. And so we have to keep weapons. And so they made it strong in our Constitution, and they're trying to take that out every day in this country. But places like Oklahoma, those conservative places are like, you're not taking our guns. You come into Oklahoma and try to take our guns, we'll shoot all of you. So they're not going to do that. Basically, New York and California were symbols of how they were going to run the rest of this country and the world, where they were going to take our rights away, take our freedom of speech away, take our weapons away, control the cannabis, control everything, and vaccinate us to death, and then spit us out through the pharmaceutical industry and just chew us up and get new ones. And it's wonderful to see. I'm so excited about the near future. We're almost in a world collapse economically, which they were planning on doing. They were going to collapse the world economically, start civil war throughout all these countries, have us all kill each other, and basically stand back in their bunkers and wait for it to happen. But that's not going to happen. The good people of the world needed everybody to really see how bad it was, so they'd finally wake up. And people are finally waking up and going, our leaders aren't good people. These are not good people. I don't care which country we're in. None of them are good. And it's time to just get rid of all of them. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to have that revolution. We're going to get rid of all of them, and we're going to take back our countries and our world, and we're going to unite. Because in the end of it's all about division.
Yeah, and it's come from this, whatever it's sort of been termed as, again, quite a controversial term of sort of New World Order over the decades, of just as power concentrates, as we spoke of before. It's a natural consequence of hierarchical structures that they taper off to a point of such extremity that it becomes totalitarianism, it becomes authoritarianism, it becomes this restrictive and repressive thing. And that's what the modern neoliberalistic politics machine has become under capitalism. It's began to eat itself, as you say, and everyone else, because of innovation, technological innovation, is becoming surplus to requirement. So whether by intention or not, it seems they're allowing, sort of, in this country, our healthcare system to collapse. Obviously, without getting too controversial, because this will be on YouTube, and I don't want to end up with my fancy little banner on the bottom and getting too much trouble for talking about the Rona. But yeah, as we're starting to see now in the UK, a woman has been given compensation for a death, her partner being killed on record, stating that they died from complication of the vaccine. So this is opening up those kind of conversations. I obviously don't want to get sort of into too much of the air quotes conspiracies around these things. As I said, for risking getting this video and that removed from the internet, because we don't really have all that much free speech. We like to believe we do, as you say, but it's that illusion. So there are people now, as you say, coming and challenging that. And to me, I thought when the Sacklers were called out with Purdue Pharma and what happened with Oxycontin, I was like, all right, the pharmaceutical system is going to get dealt with, and it hasn't. Then Biden comes out and screams, we've beat pharma, and they're giving however many hundreds of billions is still going in subsidies towards it. It's an insanity, and they're now pushing for mandatory vaccination and passports, and they're saying it's not mandatory, but when they're cutting us off, like you alluded to before, like China is, where if you have a low credit, your score is low, the doors don't open for you to get on the train. you don't get to go in spaces. You can't book the flights. You can't, access certain things if you're not an air quotes sort of good citizen. And that coercion, that level of coercion, I think came to a culmination during the lockdowns. It started well intentioned at the start, I think, for a lot of people going, yeah, we'll go along. We don't know what the fuck's happening. But that timeline and that narrative got very messy very quickly. And I think, as you said, most people now are so disenfranchised and so distrustful of any authority that they just don't know what the fuck to think. And this is leaving so many people politically homeless. And I think this is why you're seeing, as you say, like the rise of the new media, the rise of podcasting. Obviously, it's been rising for a long time. The uptake of it exploded during COVID because people suddenly couldn't, sit around in pubs and have these conversations. You couldn't get to your mate's house. You couldn't socialize in the same way. And it's really created this safe, I don't want to say safe space, but this space in media where we can at least try and allude to these topics and have these kind of conversations. And that is enough that I think people are going, all right, we need to, stop this, get the fuck together, figure out what's happening, and then move forward. And I think they're never going to report on it. Anyone that's still watching the mainstream press, they'll never see the revolution because it will never be televised by the mainstream media. It will be podcasted, it will be YouTubed and blogged, and shared on Snapchat and TikTok and all the rest of it. But we just had over 500,000 strikers marching through London the other day. Basically, fuck all the mainstream press. They had a march for those that had died from complications of the vaccine and sort of everything that was going on. That wasn't ever covered. They're just not reporting what the people are doing, and so people are feeling so disenfranchised. And I think, like, as we've kind of spoke of in this, one of the main points I hope people will take away from it is that asking them to give us freedom is redundant and ridiculous. That can't be done. We can't say, oh, please get your boot off me. No, we have to lift the fucking boot off and stand up in a metaphorical sense. I'm not as a call to violence, but ultimately, as JFK said, those who make a peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And I feel we're on the precipice of this, and I say that as a pacifist. I'm worried for this transitional period because, as I've said before, whether it is through other interventions or it is organically grown from the communities forward, I think they're not going to want to give up that control, that power. Do you know what I mean? They've lived lavish, godly lifestyles. They've acted like demigods on earth while we've been subservient to them.
That's well said. I'll tell you what, it's exactly what's going on. And I've heard that there's 1,000 lawsuits right now already in your country over wrongful deaths. It's going to be over $1 trillion in lawsuits. Pfizer's already looking at over $3 trillion in lawsuits. It's going to take down all the pharmaceutical companies. Did you see the Pfizer video on Veritas?
On Project Veritas, yeah, the guy in the restaurant.
The guy, the executive, the guy in the restaurant. Then what happened was the senior executives in Pfizer had an email chain talking about how to get by this and suppress it, not arguing that it wasn't true, but how to get around it and cover it up. And one of the execs, what's happening now is they all know it's falling down. So they're all starting to leak stuff so that they can not be in trouble. So one of the execs leaked the email between just the senior VPs out talking about them trying to cover this up, and that went out global too. That video in the restaurant has over 35 million views already. It's gone viral worldwide. So people are now realizing exactly what happened, and it's all going to fall down, and they're all going to get tried for it. So it's going to take out the medical establishments. It's going to take out the WHO. It's going to take out the media who covered it up. It was the biggest promotional marketing campaign in the history of anything in the world to shove that down our throats. And basically most good people took that jab, at least one of them. But, God bless anybody that did, and I hope they're okay. But they're proving very scientifically just how many people, every jab you took, how much more susceptible you were to infertilization, lack of testosterone, heart issues, lung issues, blood clots, brain damage. I mean, everything you could. They had a little mix in there for everybody, a little time release. So it's crazy, but it's all falling down. Even CNN, you're seeing it on CNN, our network here that was, they're even talking about how they overstated. In our country, Every COVID death got $75,000 from a hospital. The first year, the second year was 50,000. So a person comes in on a motorcycle accident, tore two of his legs off, but he had COVID. He was dead because of COVID. Hospital gets 75 grand. So they set up a system where it was like every hospital was encouraged and paid off, because which hospital is like, well, it doesn't really matter how he died, whether it's COVID or a motorcycle accident, we get 75 grand. So they're now admitting how overstated that was and how they took all the flu. I mean, it was such a masterful thing that they did. Again, these people are real pros at what they do. That's been taken down.
It's that psychological manipulation. Sorry, go on.
Well, I just saying that thing with Pfizer, that was taken down off YouTube and off every other site. But Elon Musk kept it up, and that's where it's got those 35 million views.
I think
and so that's an example of, we've taken it over. You've got Parler, you got True Socials, you've got Twitter, you got everybody like you, and they can't suppress stuff anymore. It's coming out too fast.
Yeah, I think it's still up on Rumble.
Yeah, Rumble too. Yeah, Rumble too. A few of the alternative sites.
So it's interesting that, as you say, that we're in this point of active suppression and censorship and this narrative coercion and control to make sure that we're doing the right things. Because, as you say, there's so many narratives that here in the UK, for example, that we never quite explored. I remember actively sitting and listening to Radio 1 one morning and hearing them declare on the news that they think 1 in 4 tests is faulty and will give a faulty positive. That was never mentioned again from that point onward. As you said, there was I think 2021 was the year we didn't have flu. Somehow nobody got the flu because all of the flu people were then classified as COVID. And so, in America, I know that the narrative now is it's coming out of the overestimation, and what they're claiming is or stating that they died with COVID, not from COVID. And that's, kind of where we're at with it, is that they, as you say, managed to manipulate the data and use fear. I mean, now you hear the news agents, the news and the sort of agents of authority in the system, basically stating that, we never said that. We didn't say that, you shouldn't have your healthcare removed and you shouldn't be allowed to be out in the general population if you haven't had a vaccine. When that's actively what they did. They had pundits on TV say that people were scum if they chose not to get the vaccine, when Pfizer and these other companies, I guess I'll say allegedly at this point because I don't know what's confirmed about it, was stating that they knew it didn't affect transmission. You had, people like presidents and prime ministers around the world stating that do this to protect your granny. And we now know it doesn't affect transmission. There were just so many of these lies and this bullshit that was put in front of us that, as I said before, it's left so many people disenfranchised and not understanding kind of what to believe, where to stand, and just hypercritical of everything around us.
You know what? If you go back and look, they gave the politicians and the people that made the vaccine, all those companies, they gave them all passes on taking the vaccine. Nobody in our country, all the politicians didn't have to take it. And none of the families for all the pharmaceutical companies, they all got waivers. They knew exactly what they're doing. And that's why everybody's part of it. I mean, this is going to basically take it all down. What's starting right now with the 1,000 lawsuits, what I've heard is in our country, the United States, there's going to be 1 million lawsuits. Okay. It's going to be $50 trillion in lawsuits. And they're going to sue the politicians. They're going to sue the media companies. They're going to sue everybody that shoved that down our throats because they had no right to do it. It was an experimental drug. It had never been tested. Have you seen the information coming out? They fought to have the release. They tried to suppress the testing for 75 years of what they did for the clinical trials, and they lost. So then they fought to only put it out like 5 pages a year for 20, and they lost that. And so now they're releasing it. And people are seeing just from the first 1% of what they released, it's so diabolical. They knew the heart and lung issues. They knew all the reproductive issues. They knew all this. They knew it when they did this. And so now it's all coming out. So what we're seeing is that they've run out of time. They've either got to start the Third World War. They've got to start civil wars throughout every country. They've got to basically turn us into everybody divided against each other very quickly, and get that digital currency in there and suppress us all that way, or they're going to be done. And so the chess game's about over, and they know that. So now that's why you see all the rats jumping ship, because they realize that, some of them like in the pharmaceuticals or what, they're politicians that kind of knew what was going on, but they really weren't, like, they have a plausible deniability and they can get out. They're the ones coming for it right now, because they realize if they don't come forward, then they're going to be part of it. So you're going to now see in the next 6 months, so many whistleblowers and people turning everybody in. They're going to come, just like this guy at Pfizer that turned that into the Project Veritas. That's because he wants to say 3 months from now, look, I knew it and I got out. Okay. Because he realized they're going to be crimes against humanity. They've doubled the size of Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, and they've got a giant prison in Greenland. And they've made these things huge detention centers. In our country, they have about 40,000 federal warrants each year, and they've never had more than 60,000. It's up to 300,000 right now, federal warrants, because of all these people that they basically tracked for all this. Now, they've already said they won't be able to try and put every one of them in jail because it'd be too much. They'll have to have some type of forgiveness program for some of these people, but all the key people are going to go down. So what we're talking about is going to pop in the next 2 or 3 months. This thing last week with Pfizer is really one of the big things coming out of it. You're going to see it. Justin Trudeau can't even go down the street in Canada without being booed and heckled now. My true seeker people 5 years ago said, you watch all these politicians, they're going to have to hide. They won't be able to come out of their houses without being heckled. Well, Justin Trudeau can't even come out of his house. Joe Biden can't leave without people giving him shit now. They're giving shit. John Kerry, they're giving shit to all of them. And they deserve it. Macron's the same way. They're going after Macron. He's got to stay out of the people's way too. They know what's up.
Well, yeah, as we say, like, it's people questioning sort of the narratives and looking at like the World Economic Forum and kind of all of their machinations and intentions and what they've kind of been pushing. And it's, as we said, it's the reason I settled on kind of cannabis activism and drugs activism when I was going, all right, I needed a direction to focus in with this fight, is I believe it's the first step. If we free the people's minds, everything is possible. If you can get the people to see the strings, the controllers, that can see the bars that restrict them, if they can smell the shit that they're fed, perhaps we have an opportunity to overcome this. And like, as you say, I'm quite optimistic in the general sense, looking around the world and just seeing more and more of the general kind of your layman on the street just refusing to take this shit, the collapse of their traditional sort of archetypal characters, these celebrities and whatever else that they've kept in charge and kept us sort of, following their leads, running through these trends. And people are just wanting to check out of that system now and not be told how to live.
Well,
doesn't leave a residue.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I hear everything you're saying, and it's really rewarding and inspiring to hear you at your age knowing as much as you do. I mean, you really know your stuff. Maybe you're not quite all the way there with the ET thing, but for 90% of this, you're right there. You're one of those people that's like coming out. There's the 100th monkey syndrome, you've talked about forever. You get 99 monkeys, whatever, and all of a sudden, the whole tribe will change. Well, that's what's happening with spirituality. When enough of us take enough psychedelics, when enough of us touch our higher selves and our inner souls, we're going to affect the whole societies at large. When enough of us stand up and say we're done, everybody else is going to stand up with us. So that's the truth right now. We're talking about it. We have to stand up. You can't hide anymore. People have to come out and say their piece. And as more and more people do it, then it's just going to break it all down. And that's where we're at. We're about to crumble those walls down, just like we did in East Germany. We're about to crumble those walls down across the world. I don't think it'll be more than what they're saying now is by summer. In fact, what I read today in Benjamin Fulford, who's a very, some people would call him radical, but he used to be the editor-in-chief of Forbes and New York Times out of Asia. And after 9/11, he was told by the Asian mobs that was a fake con job. And he looked into it and they showed him all the proof. And so he changed his life, and he's been doing a blog and speaking out ever since then. And so I follow him as one of the people. he came out and just so you know, he didn't want to talk about ETs or some of this radical stuff for a long time. It's like he wanted to kind of stay in the straight and narrow. But over the last couple of years, he's realized it's all tied in together too. And there's no way to separate it. He's now saying that we're going to have a jubilee by June of this year, that they'll actually have cleaned up the mess worldwide enough so they'll be able to forgive all the debt of the world. Nobody will own anything on their houses, their credit cards, their student loans. Anything ever will all be forgiven. There'll be a jubilee, and we'll have actually taken over that 900 trillion from the elite of the world to start the giant jobs program. And he's predicting that by June. And he's a conservative guy. He's not a guy that's gone out and really wanted to say a lot of this stuff, because he really was talking about some mainstream conspiracy stuff at one time. But it's just gotten larger and larger, where you've got to start looking at ridding the population of this planet and the ET thing, and a lot of stuff that's much more diabolical, the satanic pedophilia stuff, everything that's come in. And he talks about it now. And so it's really watching him wake up is really kind of cool too. But that jubilee is going to come in, whether it's by June or by the end of the year. We're going to be living in a world that's so different. I mean, think about all these people that are going to have a hard time taking this in. Once they get told that they're not going to have any more debt ever again, that they get free energy for the rest of their lives for their cars and their homes, and that they're all going to have great jobs. I mean, nobody's going to be complaining about that after about 3 weeks, when they go to their bank accounts and realize all their home loans are paid off, all their credit cards are done, nobody owes anything, no more bills. Oh, by the way, now power is free. They're hooking up power for free. We got hydrogen cars, and they're going to be like, they get med beds where they're all healed. You know, your 70-year-old grandparents and stuff, your parents are going to be turned into perfectly healthy people. And all of a sudden people are going to go, okay, where do I sign up? This is great. You know, it's all great. I mean, I'll live like this. They're going to go, yeah, it's nice. Huh? We got rid of the central banks and all the people that control everybody and all the politicians. We got rid of all of them because we don't need them. They're not helping us. We got rid of all of them. Now we can grow cannabis wherever we want to. We can do whatever we want. You can take psychedelics wherever you want. You can do whatever you want, as long as you're not hurting anybody, and as long as you're peaceful and you're, not inflicting any type of control over anybody else, because that's what it is. In the rest of the ET world, it's free will, all independence. We're all independently in control of ourselves.
Wow, this has been a fascinating podcast, Tim. Yeah, there's a lot to digest there, my friend. There is a hell of a lot to digest there. I do hope to have this conversation continue into the future and get you back on when I'm around episode 200 or wherever it is in sort of the near future. And I do hope that is done entirely as a free will exercise from my free powered podcast. And it's us laughing back at this system. I honestly, I would revel to have that. I would adore for that to be the direction of the world. Perhaps it's my pessimism and the abuse of my youth and whatever else, my own trauma. But yeah, I believe in people. I do. I really do believe in the power of people, and that we can sort of change the world. And I do believe that we need some kind of galvanizing moment, and whether that be terrestrial or extraterrestrial, I do not care, as long as it empowers the people to rise up against this system and to take that sovereignty of consciousness and to live within the autonomy of themselves, as you said, as long as they do no harm to others.
You know what? We have all been so abused in some way or another throughout our lives. Our parents have been abused. Our grandparents have been abused. We've lived in a very mixed up society, and we don't even know what true freedom is like. We're going to get a taste of it over the next couple of years, and we're going to realize how other people on other planets live, where they don't live with any fear. They don't live with anybody suppressing them. They don't live with any worries about their bills or their money or their lives. Everybody lives a good life. There are no trillionaires. There are no billionaires, because like in Native American and old tribal societies, anybody that would take more than their share would be considered crazy. The leaders weren't those people. The leaders were the ones that took care of the people. The kings were the ones that served the people. They didn't lord over them. And so we're going to go back to a society where the kings and queens, or the people that run these worlds, our world, are going to be the servants of the world. We're going to make sure that everybody has the same. We're all good. We're all taken care of. That's the way tribal societies have always been, and that's what we're going to be. and we're going to all heal ourselves through cannabis and psychedelics and wonderful therapeutic systems, ketamine, all these systems. But you can go in there and get integration, or you can do it on your own. It's all going to come in. We're all going to get in those med beds. Those med beds are also going to heal our psychological issues too. They're going to really help us come back and heal the trauma, because it's stuffed into our bodies. They've proven that. You take trauma and you stuff it into parts of your bodies, and that's what psychologists and that's what kinesiologists can use to get it out through muscle testing. But they can do it through the med beds and stuff, and we can do that almost overnight. And that's what they're going to do. And we're all going to be going, young or old, are going to be using these med beds to get rid of the PTSD, their ailments, their healing their bodies and minds. And then we're going to be a thriving, wonderful, passionate society that's going to be doing the greatest art and music and discoveries imaginable as we go into the next 20, 30 years. And we're going to be traveling around the universe, meeting all these different people that come from all different walks of life and societies throughout this galaxy and other galaxies. So it's going to come in. You watch over the next few months, you're going to see it all. That Project Veritas thing and the stuff that's coming out so quick, and all the things, and it's collapsing on them so fast that what I'm being told is the only thing they can do is either try to start a nuclear war, a world war, civil wars across the country, or pull the electrical and the internet grids and try to shut it all down and create chaos that way. They're almost out of time. And the good people of the world already know their last chess moves. It's not going to be allowed. Everybody's going to know it. And what they're saying is over the next 6 months, this is all going to come out. And then these jubilees and all this information is going to start coming to us. So it won't take long for us to see what's real and what's not. So we'll keep in touch, and we'll see which side comes out.
Excellent. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I say, I want it to happen. You have my backing, sir. If not, my belief, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's been a fascinating conversation, Tim. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, just want to say thank you for taking the time and for introducing me to some new novel concepts and things for me to go and muse on and go fall down some rabbit holes. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this, so thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's through education and doing the stuff that you do and we do together. I don't make money. I've lost more money on the Emerald Cup than I ever made. I'm looking for my greenie points to get to heaven and be in one of those first spacecrafts, which go with Elon Musk around the stars. So you're going to be there too with the work you do. They're grading every one of us. We're all getting scores, and the good people of this earth are going to inherit it, and we're going to be giving money to be able to do things like they're going to look at what you're doing, and all of a sudden you're going to be getting $1 million so you can build a real first-class studio so you can do this right and really teach people. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to be giving grants all over the world for people like us, because that's what should have been happening all along. So you watch how much bounty comes to us and how much success and how much validation comes in. So keep up the good work. Let's keep in touch, and we'll see where it goes over the next few months. I think people better be really prepared for some very, very revolutionary changes. Do you know, the last thing I'll say is that, I don't know if I said this, but astrologically, I deal with psychics and healers, and I deal with all sides. Astrologically, this is the first planetary alignment in the last 250 something years that's come in. And the last time it came into this alignment, you had the French Revolution and the American Revolution. So all the astrologers are talking about the revolutionary things that are going to take place in the next 2 years. They're already predicting exactly what we're talking about. And astrologically, it's lined up to be that. Only this time, we won't have to have the French Revolution. We'll be guillotine everybody. We're just going to send them off to Guantanamo Bay and Greenland, and they can all just stay there the rest of their lives. And they can live with each other. And we'll just take back this planet and live in peace and harmony with everybody else. So
I was going to say,
it'll be good.
They've spent plenty of time building private prisons that can house several million of them. So yeah, they've made their own bed. Time to lay in it. It's been a pleasure, Tim. I'll include links to your website and to sort of all of the companies that you operate with, the farms, the Cup, and with Area 101. Next time I'm out in California, because I do hope to be out in the States again, I'm definitely going to hit you up. You want to come to one of your parties and meet some of your people, because sounds like a very fun evening.
Oh yeah, come out to our Emerald Cup award ceremony, our harvest balls. We go all night. Our last big party at the harvest ball, we put out 2 ounces of ecstasy, a couple of pounds of mushrooms, and 5 bottles of acid. We had about 1,200 people running around higher than heck, having a great time. the lady at the Flamingo, this old school hotel. I walked about 4 a.m. I walked out to her and I said, are you okay? Because she was watching us all flying around with music going on and everything. And she said, I'm cool. We've never seen anything like this, but it looks like fun. And we had this 70-year-old lady that was tripping on us and going, wow, you guys are wild. So you come out and hang with us and we'll show you how to do it right.
Awesome. Yeah, let's just make a date. Let's make a date. All right, I'll not keep you any longer. Thank you again for your time, Tim. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, I'll let you sign off now, and I'll do my housekeeping and talk shit and get people to subscribe and all that lovely stuff. So yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Well, this is Tim Blake from the Emerald Cup. You can go to theemeraldcup.com and get information. You can look at my Instagram, which is Blake_Mendocino. You can look at Area 101 events for Area 101 on Instagram, Facebook. You can check us out. LinkedIn too. We're there. I'm writing 2 books with my literary agent. I've got a television deal with one of the largest agents in LA. They represent Will Smith, Keith Richards, Glenn Stefani. It's all about what I'm talking about right now. So I've got a book series coming out. Everybody will see it. And thank you very much for your time and what you do. I look forward to seeing you in person.
Likewise, Tim. Likewise. Been a pleasure. Right. Peace, love, man. Bye. Wow. I sit down every week in the studio and I never know what conversation I'm going to have. That was not the conversation I expected to have. Not to make a judgment on it, positive or negative. Like, that was fucking fascinating. Obviously the same with every guest, really. There's not all the things that I agree with what Tim has said. But it was fascinating to just allow him that opportunity to express his worldview and his belief around this system. And I'm fascinated by humans. That's why I do this podcast, is what makes us tick, what unifies us, what divides us, what is it to be human beyond all of this superfluous bullshit, these labels, these facades, these games, these abstract systems of restriction. What is raw humanity? And yeah, man, kind of the utopian vision that was sort of presented there, as I sort of spoke of, whether it be through terrestrial or extraterrestrial means, I don't necessarily care. I really don't. It would be cool to know there are aliens. Like I said, I do have a I want to believe poster. I guess more so actually because I find Fox Mulder as a character fascinating for this kind of truth seeker, this working to expose kind of what is going on in the world. I find him quite a relatable character, I guess. And my aliens, I guess, have been truth within the systems. But it's interesting that there are so many people in the world that are in professional positions that share these beliefs. And again, this isn't me making a moral or ethical or anything kind of judgment of them. It's just an abstract observation of them. And like I said, they're fascinating in terms of where they are kind of solidified in the minds of people like Tim, because there is, as I said, interpretable evidence that even as a skeptic like myself could say, well, actually, as I said, the acceleration of technology, the people from various fields that have moved over, various leaks and people that have spoke of this for decades now, they've dedicated their lives to this space. It's fascinating. I think I'd actually like to maybe get somebody else on to talk about sort of UFOs and stuff, because it's not a subject I ascribe to. I've never really put that much thought into it. For I'm a sci-fi fan, and I do enjoy, like I said, the X-Files, various of the programs and things like that are based on these kind of conceptual ideas. But it's just kind of, it's beyond my remit, I guess, in the sense that my focus has always been the fight I'm in. As I've said many times, I'm at war because I'm made an enemy of the state by my lifestyle choices, by the way I express myself, by the things that I feel I need to do to control my physical and mental health, to help regulate my spiritual and emotional health. So yeah, just fucking fascinating, really. I enjoyed that. And like I said, I do sincerely hope that in 6 months, 12 months, Tim's back on again and we're sat here and we're going, yeah, how's your free hydrogen car? How's all of, these riches and luxuries that we would be afforded? But again, they wouldn't almost be luxury because it would be standard, because it would be all of these sort of, it's that renewable vision, ironically, that we were kind of pitched by capitalists through codifying of neoliberalist doctoral ideas and ideology into modern economic theory through, as I spoke of before, Thatcherism and Reaganomics, and this kind of deregulation and accumulation of money into certain areas. Yeah, I'm struggling to sort of finish my thoughts because I'm going over everything sort of that was said. Like I said, there's different things that I don't agree with what sort of Tim alluded to. There were some points I didn't feel necessary to delve into. But yeah, that was fascinating. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap up and let you fine folk go. Do let me know in the comments if you would be interested in me speaking to more people in those kind of spheres. As I've always said with this podcast, it's about people, it's about stories. I just want to talk to people. I'm fascinated by people, and obviously my main remit has been within cannabis and drugs and human rights and dipped into sort of sex work and other things like that. But I think I'd like to kind of have some of these conversations just to explore other people's belief, not to, in the parlance of kind of either neoliberalistic political parties' persuasion of, platforming different people, but just having these conversations, their ideas, the topic. I'm not trying to indoctrinate anybody by anything that we're saying in these conversations. We're just sat with people each week. You find folk come along for the ride, and we have these conversations. And I'm seeking truth. I'm seeking awareness, not for any personal gain other than just so my fucking brain doesn't hurt, so I sleep better at night, so I can make sense of the mishmash reality around me. So yeah, I'd like to explore other kind of alternative topics. I know obviously there's some things maybe too controversial, but I'm not a shock jock. I'm not going to just bring people on for the sake of it. It's got to be that interest. It's got to have that other side to it. So yeah, I'm waffling, but do let me know if that's the kind of thing you guys would be interested in, because obviously I'm gonna have these conversations anyway, I guess. But I want to keep you guys happy because this is you're the reason I do this. Well, secondary to the privilege and pleasure that I get from being able to interact with these people and have these conversations and learn about these fascinating subjects and people's different worldviews. It's given me a much more rounded view and perspective on the world and the people that inhabit it, and I'm ever more fascinated. So I thoroughly fucking enjoyed that. Rant over, folks. If you enjoyed this, please do like, share, subscribe. Please do give us follow on all social media platforms as well. If you really like this, you can check us out on patreon.com/the Simpa Life, where you can help me keep the lights on this project for a couple of quid each month. You will get exclusive access to guests as well, and other exclusive content, some weeks more than others, dependent on the guest and whether we can fit it in. But yeah, I've been Simba. You've been wonderful. Go enjoy yourselves. Have fucking fun. Be wonderful to each other, and prepare for this utopia. Because I'm kind of convinced. I'm not saying I believe it, but it's a wonderful idea. And yeah, I think it was Aristotle that said the height of intelligence is to be able to entertain an idea that isn't your own without believing it. And I'm thoroughly entertained by the ideas that we've expressed today, and I do hope that you'll kind of, I guess, take it with that pinch of salt. That's not to lessen Tim's position on it, as I've said, or anything that has been said, but just to remember that everything is conjecture ultimately in this world. There isn't the science, without going back into that whole fucking thing. But yeah, you know what you're doing. Fucking go do it. Peace on the folks.